Chapter 388. Wang Chong didn't say much. Li Sai had lived in the north for a long time and wasn't in the capital, so it was normal for him to not know about Wuzi steel. Everyone was just venting their resentment for being bullied by him. Clang. Wang Chong didn't say anything. He drew the sword at his waist and casually swung it. Clang. As the sword swung, a protruding rock on the ground was cut into two by Wang Chong. The rock slid open, and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. After doing all this, Wang Chong casually swung the sword and sheathed the Wuzi steel sword back at his waist. He was completely nonchalant. "This is Wuzi steel," Wang Chong said calmly. Facts speak louder than words. No matter how much one said, it wouldn't be as convincing as a casual swing of the sword. Across from Wang Chong, Li Sai was stunned as he stared at the rock. Wang Chong's sword had brushed across the rock as though it was a piece of tofu. He didn't use much strength at all. However, the sturdy yellow mountain rock was neatly cut into two. Li Sai wasn't a swordsmithing expert, but he wasn't ignorant either. The weapon in Wang Chong's hand was clearly no ordinary weapon. What a sharp sword! Li Sai looked at the smooth cut and muttered to himself. He was completely dumbfounded. It wasn't that he hadn't seen powerful weapons before. In fact, he had seen the swords of many generals in the army, and they were all extremely sharp. However, no matter how sharp they couldn't compare to the sword in Wang Chong's hand. Li Sai could sense that Wang Chong had used the sharpness of the sword to cut open the rock, and not his stellar energy or sword chi. One must know that there was a fundamental difference between the two. At this instant, Li Sai had to admit that he was tempted. On the battlefield, many people wore armor. Even some of the heavily armored cavalrymen were wearing thick and sturdy armor made of dark steel. It was extremely exhausting to fight with them, and the same punch would be greatly weakened when it landed on them. Therefore, on the battlefield where killing was fierce, a good weapon was extremely important. Li Sai wanted to find a good weapon, but he didn't have any background, so it wasn't easy to get a good weapon. Moreover, his physique was very tall and his strength was extremely great. Ordinary weapons were simply not suitable for his physique and strength. Therefore, Li Sai did not deliberately look for him. But the weapon in Wang Chong's hand, Li Sai couldn't help but admit that if he had such a sharp weapon on the battlefield, he would definitely be able to kill anything that stood in his way. He would be able to display his strength to 120%, allowing him to display his lifetime's worth of expertise, and even better establish meritorious service. What a pity it's too short. Li Sai's eyes flashed, almost subconsciously. His physique was tall, and his arms were extremely long. Ordinary weapons were not suitable for him at all. If he held a weapon that was not suitable for him, no matter how sharp it was, his hands and feet would be tied, and he would not be able to display his strength. This kind of 3-foot weapon was clearly not suitable for him. Haha, it's fine if it's too short. I can help you tailor-make a weapon suitable for your height and body shape. Wang Chong's ears were very sharp, and he couldn't help but laugh when he heard Li Sai's ravings. Li Sai's physique, whether it was weapons or armor, had to be extra large. He had already thought of this for him. A fierce tiger should be equipped with the sharpest claws and teeth. The reason why Wang Chong had called him over wasn't to serve him as a slave, but to help him reach greater heights than he had in his previous life. Wang Chong would not only equip him with the sharpest greatsword, but after cousin Wang Liang brought back the meteoric medal, he would also equip him with the sturdiest armor and the best steed. In his last life, the invincible great general was brave and fierce, but his defense was lacking. This had begun when he first entered the army as a small soldier. Because of his combat style, which emphasized offense and not defense, his body was riddled with scars. By the time he became the invincible great general, his body was already riddled with scars. There were saber wounds and sword wounds everywhere, and not a single patch of skin was left unscathed. The invincible great general's death was not unrelated to the various internal injuries that had accumulated over time. Therefore, in Wang Chong's plan, other than equipping him with the Wuzi steel greatsword and helping him gather an army as soon as possible, it also included creating the sturdiest armor. Li Sai's eyes clearly showed his interest, but it was only for a moment. Li Sai quickly regained his senses. "Stinking brat, Do you really think you are so kind? Li Sai stared coldly at Wang Chong said, his face unfriendly. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. He did not believe that Wang Chong had transferred him over from the army camp in the north just to gift him treasured swords and sabers for free. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. You guessed right. I do have something to ask of you. As long as you do a few things for me, not only can I tailor you a Wuzi steel greatsword and give you the sturdiest armor, I can also send you back to the army camp. Wang Chong said with a smile. Li Sai was currently filled with dissatisfaction. Wang Chong also knew that it was not right of him to forcefully transfer him over from the north. Therefore, Wang Chong did not expect to subdue him right from the start. He would first keep him by his side, then think of a way to convince him step by step so that he would willingly stay by his side and complete the mission he shouldered with him. As expected. Li Sai laughed coldly as if he had expected it. If I'm not wrong, you are only a 10-man squad leader in biting, right? To do a good job, one must first sharpen his tools. Following me for 2 to 3 months won't take up too much of your time. Besides, don't you want to go to the Anxi Protectorate? If you still want to go when the time comes, I can help you. Wang Chong said with a smile. How did you know? Li Sai's expression flickered in shock. Although he had joined the biting protectorate, the place he wanted to go the most was the western regions, where Fu Jiezi, Ban Chao, and the others had fought on the battlefield. But the western regions were filled with Hu, so the Anxi Protectorate did not recruit soldiers in the western regions. All of the soldiers were recruited from Qixi, biting, as well as from the mainland. They were all dispatched by the imperial court. Li Sai had applied for his position in Qixi, believing that the western regions was closer to the western regions, so the Anxi Protectorate would definitely be given priority. Who could have expected that when the Bureau of Military Personnel came around, he would be transferred to biting? Although the biting protectorate had its share of battles, it was generally peaceful. Moreover, the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates and the Tang dynasty were still in the midst of minor conflicts and concessions. Overall, they were not prepared to start a war with the Tang dynasty. These were all insignificant skirmishes on the border. In biting, even with Li Sai's astonishing cultivation, it was very difficult for him to find a place where he could use his skills. This was what troubled Li Sai the most. What he wanted to do the most was to join the Anxi Protectorate and display his skills in the war-torn western regions, establishing his career and fulfilling his ambitions. Although Wang Chong's Wuzi steel sword was very attractive to him, it was not as attractive as those last words. Brat, you're not joking with me, are you? Do you really have that kind of power? Li Sai stared at Wang Chong said. Since I can transfer you from biting, do you think it will be very difficult to send you to the western regions? Wang Chong smiled noncommittally. Li Sai's eyes widened. That's right. If this young master could easily transfer him from biting, then he would definitely be able to send him to the western regions as well. If he could successfully enter the western regions, then everything before him would not be so difficult to accept. In that instant, Li Sai recalled the sword at Wang Chong's waist. Li Sai's heart was instantly moved. Heroes loved swords, and as long as one was a true general, there was no one who did not like treasured swords. It was the same for Li Sai. However, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't be able to afford such treasured swords with his wealth. It was impossible for Li Sai not to be moved when he suddenly encountered such an inconceivably sharp weapon. Brett speak. What do you want me to do? Let me tell you first, I can't agree to your unreasonable requests. A gentleman loves money, but he must obtain it in a proper way. Li Sai will never agree to do that kind of shameless thing. Li Sai's words were resolute and decisive. A true man should not be ashamed of the heavens, and should not be ashamed of the earth. This was the way of life between heaven and earth. How could a good man bend his back for 5 buckets of rice? No matter how much he wanted to go to the western regions, no matter how much he wanted to build a career, no matter how much he liked treasured swords and weapons, he could not go against his own principles and the way of life of a true man. Don't worry. I will never let you do such a thing. Wang Chong laughed. Looking at the giant Li Sai in front of him, Wang Chong really admired him. It is better to obtain something straight than to seek something crooked. Li Sai's character ran through his whole life, even when he was still in decline. A hero was a hero. Although the current Li Sai was far from the powerful invincible general in the future, just a few words were enough to make Wang Chong respect him. Even if he did not become the invincible general in the future, a person like Li Sai was worthy of respect. Humph! Unaware of Wang Chong's thoughts, Li Sai only coldly harumphed. He really didn't have a good impression of this kind of young master from an aristocratic family who only knew how to covet wealth and enjoyment. Speak, what do you want me to do? Hee, you'll know when the time comes. Wang Chong smiled, intentionally keeping Wang Chong in suspense. How could he know what he wanted Li Sai to do? 2 to 3 months was just a temporary measure. Let's just drag it out for now. When the time comes, I'll think of something else. He did want to extend the time by a bit, say half a year, 2 to 3 years, or something like that. But the problem was that Li Sai was currently brimming with anger toward him. As long as he opened his mouth, Li Sai would definitely not agree. I'll have to think of something in the future. While thinking, Wang Chong calmly walked past Li Sai and entered the deflecting blade manor. Chapter 389. Hee. After a moment of contemplation, Li Sai turned around and followed behind Wang Chong. Given that Wang Chong had transferred him here, he couldn't even return to the barracks at the moment. At the very least, before Wang Chong fulfilled his promise and sent him to the western regions, Li Sai wouldn't be leaving for the time being. If that lad dared to lie to him, don't blame him for flying into a rage. Scion of a prestigious clan? He couldn't care less about such matters. To think that this big fellow would be convinced by Gongzi so easily. I thought that he would cause a huge ruckus. A Wuzi steel sword. Given that fellow's height, that should be the weight of 2 Wuzi steel swords, right? That's several 100,000 gold taels we're talking about. If it were you, would you do it? Stop spouting nonsense. When have you ever seen anything that Gongzi can't resolve? That's true. Abu Tong is the son of great General Abusi. Even after being beaten up by Gongzi and hung on a tree, he still couldn't even let out a fart. Discussions could be heard in the surroundings, and they couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. But at the same time, they couldn't help but feel curious as to why Gongzi would place so much importance on that brawny man. Li Sai? He must be a nameless nobody. If he was truly formidable, why hadn't the capital heard of him before? To think that the Gongzi would use a Wuzi steel sword to win him over. While everyone was talking, no one noticed that in a corner far away, there was a handsome young man with skin as white as snow and a slender neck that was even more delicate than a woman's. From start to finish, he had been silently watching everything. That lad is a little formidable. To think that he would actually be able to pass. Su Chong, or more accurately, the cross-dressing Su Yichin, stared at the gates of the deflecting blade manor with a gleam in her eyes. For the past few days, when that man was causing a ruckus, she had been visiting him almost every single day. However, she had never caused a ruckus. Instead, she had quietly watched from afar. It wasn't that she wasn't convinced of Wang Chong's strength, so she didn't help him. It was just that Su Yichin had long since noticed that this burly man, who clearly carried the aura of a soldier, was unbelievably powerful. In the last few days, deflecting blade manor had been brimming with resentment. Many people were saying that once Wang Chong returned, they would gather the experts of the various clans and charge forward to give that bastard a vicious beating to vent their anger. However, Su Yichin snorted disdainfully. They didn't even know the depth of their opponent's strength, yet they wanted to swarm him and defeat him with their numbers. If they really did that, Su Yichin was sure that these guys would be bedridden for 10 days to half a month. If even the old nanny by Princess Anai Huang's side had suffered a setback, how could they, who were still wet behind the ears, possibly be a match for him? Miss, we can't watch anymore. The petite maid at the side said. She felt that it was not worth it for her young mistress to wait for 3 days. What's the rush? I don't believe that I'll lose to him. Su Yichin flicked her snow-white fingers confidently. While Wang Chong was away on a mission, she hadn't been slacking off either. Over the past month, she had been constantly tempering her chess skills. Now, She was confident that her chess skills had improved a lot compared to before. This time, no matter what, she was determined to defeat him and vent the hatred in her heart. Also, darned lass, don't call me Mississippi. How many times have I told you? Yes, Mississippi. Thais gongzi. The petite maid had just chuckled when she received a slap on the head, and she immediately turned obedient. However, the corners of her lips still curled up, revealing a smile on her face. Striding forward, master and servant quickly followed the crowd into the Deflecting Blade Manor. Passing through more than half of the Deflecting Blade Manor, they headed straight for the chess hall on the second floor. The Deflecting Blade Manor was quickly tidied up. A large number of resources were transported up Deflecting Blade Mountain in a short time. The broken tables and chairs were quickly replaced, and the fruits of the season, all of them dazzling in color, were quickly transported to various parts of the Deflecting Blade Manor, allowing anyone to enjoy them for free. The archery range, the racecourse, the drill grounds. Everything was cleaned up. This was Huang Qian'er's first time entering the Deflecting Blade Manor, and everything felt fresh to her. Of the 3 great training camps, nothing was more popular than this one and only Deflecting Blade Manor. It wasn't just Kunwa training camp, even the students of Longwei and Shunwei training camps had been attracted here. In the 3 great training camps, the Deflecting Blade Manor had an extremely high reputation. This wasn't just because of Wang Chang's reputation, but also because of the spirit vein. More importantly, a large number of prestigious clans and influential scions had gathered here, and even the princesses of the royal family had appeared. In the 3 great training camps, it was publicly acknowledged that only the most talented scions and the most talented scions could enter the Deflecting Blade Manor. It was even rumored that the reason why those scions from poor backgrounds were able to enter the Deflecting Blade Manor was because of Duke Jiao. Duke Jiao liked to promote the younger generation, and Wang Chong had done so because of Duke Jiao's intentions. And the most talented scions had the ultimate goal of receiving an audience with Duke Jiao, and those who performed outstandingly might even receive Duke Jiao's recommendation to meet the Empire's Supreme Holy Emperor and be approved to become an official in the future. For such people, even if they came from poor backgrounds, they were bound to have a bright future. To them, one's background was no longer important. Thus, in the Deflecting Blade Manor, only the direct descendants of the prestigious clans would get along with the commoners who came from poor backgrounds. Huang Qian'er had naturally heard of this, but this was her first time seeing it in person. The Wang clan is already this wealthy? Huang Qian'er's eyes constantly scanned the row upon row of resplendent buildings. The entire Deflecting Blade Manor was made up of countless palaces, each of them exquisitely carved and beautifully decorated, not to mention their opulent decorations. With a glance, Huang Qian'er saw many pillars covered in true gold, eaves inlaid with night pearls, beast eyes, steps made of white marble, and landscapes made of agate and coral. Every single one of these items was worth a fortune and could be sold for a very high price. But in the Deflecting Blade Manor, they were just simple decorations. As for those colorful fruits, they were extremely precious in the capital and were sold by the tael. But here, one could eat them by the truckload. The pomegranates, grapes, and walnuts of the western regions, the dates and figs of the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu, and even the blueberries, snake fruits, lemons of the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu. Everything could be found here. Although Huang Qian'er didn't know much about the Wang clan, she knew that it was famous for its incorruptibility. The prices of the items before her were astronomical, not something that the Wang clan could afford through normal means. In truth, it truly wasn't the Wang clan. Everything before her had been earned by the youth beside her. For a clan renowned for its incorruptibility to suddenly possess so much wealth, the court officials would have long since impeached them. But the Wang clan was completely fine, because everyone knew that all of this was obtained by the young man beside them through legal means, in an official manner. A single Wuzi steel sword could be sold for 70 to 80,000 taels of gold, perhaps even several 100,000 taels of gold. To ordinary clans, this was an unimaginable sum. Wang Chang's wealth alone was already enough to rival an entire country, surpassing the combined wealth of many great clans. What are you thinking about? A voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Wang Chong looked at Huang Qian'er in astonishment. Huang Qian'er had been silent from the very start, and it seemed like she was in a daze. "It's nothing." Huang Qian'er shook her head and quickly regained her composure. Her face remained cold, as if unwilling to get too close to Wang Chong. "Hee hee." Wang Chong chuckled, paying it no heed. By the time he returned, the deflecting blade manner was back on track. With so many people working together, and with Wei Anfang's supervision, the deflecting blade manner was quickly cleaned up. The current deflecting blade manner was different from when Wang Chong had left. Wang Chong noticed that many new items had been added to the deflecting blade manner, such as pearls, agate, and white jade. Wang Chong had only made a start here, but soon, like a rolling snowball, new items were added in. Needless to say, Wang Chong knew that these items were added by the signs of other clans in the deflecting blade manner. Wang Chong didn't mind this at all. On the contrary, he was happy to see it happen. This meant that even though he was the one who established the deflecting blade manner, everyone who entered it had gradually developed a sense of belonging to it, and they had even begun to treat it as their home. For a system to continue on, it was impossible to rely solely on the abilities of an individual. This was because such a system would rise with an individual's outstanding abilities, and it would also collapse with the fall of that individual. What Wang Chong wanted was a system where, even without him, the deflecting blade manner would be able to nurture a steady stream of talented generals in accordance with his plans and ideals. Right, I forgot to ask. Given your abilities, you should be able to join the 3 great training camps, right? Which training camp did you join? Wang Chong asked. It was just a casual question, but Huang Qian'er's complexion immediately darkened. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat. He immediately realized that he had asked the wrong question. "Shenwei." But that is no longer the case. Huang Qian'er coldly said, glaring at Wang Chong with a gaze that seemed capable of killing. "Because the clan has ordered me to withdraw." Wang Chong's face immediately turned awkward. There was no need to ask. It was definitely because of him that the Huang clan had ordered her to withdraw from Shenwei training camp. "If you're willing, I might be able to help you. There's no need. I won't go back." The children of the Huang clan are men of their word, and they would never do something so treacherous. Huang Qian'er interrupted Wang Chong without hesitation. She glared at Wang Chong with the same hateful expression. Huang Qian'er had already planned out her life, but the conflict between the Wang clan and the Huang clan had completely disrupted her plans. For the great fairy of dainty hands to be forced to withdraw from the Shenwei training camp and serve as Wang Chong's bodyguard and maid, how could Huang Qian'er not hate Wang Chong? However, she was also a proud person. Even if she was unwilling, she had already made a promise to her clan, so she would definitely fulfill it. Chapter 390. Wang Chong was also in an awkward position. Huang Qian'er was an unexpected outcome of the conflict between the Wang and Huang clan, and it was an outcome that Wang Chong was powerless to change. However, Wang Chong had no intention of chasing her away. Firstly, the protection of the renowned fairy of dainty hands would be an additional layer of security. Secondly, Huang Qian'er's thunderclap of dainty hands was still a huge flaw. However, Huang Qian'er was currently filled with hostility toward him, so she probably wouldn't listen to anything he said. Wang Chong had to find a suitable opportunity to remind her. "Gongzi, Gongzi." Just as these thoughts were flashing through his mind, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Turning around, Wang Chong saw Wei Anfang panting heavily as he rushed toward him anxiously. "Anfang, what's wrong?" Wang Chong asked. Could it be that Princess Anai Huang or Li Sai had caused trouble for him again? In the current deflecting blade manner, the only ones who could give Wang Chong a headache were these 2 gods. "Gongzi, do you still remember Su Chong?" Wei Anfang asked anxiously. "Su Chong?" Wang Chong blinked his eyes. Wasn't that the Su Yiqin of the Su clan? Her pseudonym was actually Su Chong, and she was here for him. Previously, he intentionally made things difficult for her, but she was the only one who didn't pass. Could she have caused trouble for him this time? Gongzi has been away for too long, so I arranged for Gongzi to test the students in the chess hall so as to send them to the spirit vein. Who could have thought that Su Chong would take advantage of Gongzi's absence to challenge all of the examinees in the chess hall and defeat all of them? That's not all. He challenged all of the examiners in the chess hall as well. He defeated all of them. We're just waiting for Gongzi now, Wei Yanfang said. Wei Yanfang had no idea what the relationship between Wang Chong and Su Chong was, but it was clear that Gongzi didn't want Su Chong to pass. That was also the reason why he didn't pass all of the examinees previously. But this time, the other party clearly didn't come with good intentions and was purposely trying to make things difficult for the young master. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made such a move. What? On the other side, Wang Chong raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. He was also slightly surprised. Su Yiqin actually challenged everyone, which was really beyond his expectations. But soon, Wang Chong understood her plan. This guy obviously held a grudge for what happened last time, so he first defeated everyone to prove his ability. If he didn't let her pass, it would prove that he had no foresight and all the instructors and students he had chosen were not qualified to pass. If she passed, it would be the same as Wang Chong admitting defeat in front of her. Su Yiqin could be considered to have used this method to lift her head and regain some ground, while also defeating her own army. What an arrogant fellow! Wang Chong understood Su Yiqin's plan and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. He had long known that this talented daughter of the capital's Su clan was arrogant and unwilling to suffer any losses, but he hadn't expected that she would use this method to make things difficult for him. However, this fellow was probably going to miscalculate. In terms of chess, she had accomplished something that not even the legendary war god of the Tang dynasty had been able to do, so Su Yiqin was probably even more unlikely. Let's go and take a look. Wang Chong clasped his hands behind his back and grinned. He took the lead and walked in the direction of the chess hall. Boom! As soon as Wang Chong stepped into the chess hall, there was a hubbub. All of the examinees, as well as the examiners, were crowded together, watching something. Peering through the gaps in the crowd, Wang Chong immediately saw a handsome youth. His posture was ramrod straight, and he had a calm expression on his face. He was currently fighting with one of his examiners. The handsome youth didn't seem to be affected at all. He had a relaxed expression on his face, but the examiner opposite him was drenched in sweat. His face was so pale that there wasn't a single trace of blood in it. However, his eyes were fixated on the chessboard on the table, and it was as if his soul had been sucked out of him. That's the most formidable examiner in our chess hall. Wei Yanfang whispered at the side. Got it? Wang Chong nodded. Without needing to think too much, Wang Chong knew that Su Yiqin would definitely win. It would be truly strange if the best logistics officer of King Qi in his previous life couldn't defeat a few examiner students in the chess hall. As expected, in less than 2 breaths, Wang Chong heard Su Yiqin's voice. You've lost. Su Yiqin pushed the chessboard away and stood up from her seat. She raised her head proudly, a gleeful look on her face. This time, she had defeated all of the examiners by Wang Chong's side. She wanted to use this method to humiliate Wang Chong and exact vengeance for the previous time. On the other side of the chessboard, that pitiful examiner was dejected. He was trembling in fear, and his entire body was drenched in sweat. The entire chess hall was deathly silent. Pa pa pa. At this moment, a resounding applause suddenly sounded. As Wang Chong clapped, he walked over with a smile. As if awakened from a dream, the crowd noticed that Wang Chong had arrived on the stage at some point. One by one, they backed away, opening up a path for Wang Chong. Young master! Young master! Young master! That the crowd lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. In the chess hall, Wang Chong held absolute authority. After all of the books on military strategy were written by Wang Chong. Even the instructors of the training camp were no match for him. They still didn't know that even So Young-sun had lost to him. Young master, I can pass this time, right? Su Yiqin looked at Wang Chong, her head held high, and she spoke rudely. Wang Chong hadn't given her any face last time, so her words this time were also merciless. Whether you pass or not, the chess hall has its own rules. If you want to enter the spirit vein, you'll have to pass the test first. Wang Chong clasped his hands behind his back and smiled. So be it, Su Yiqin said, but inwardly she was sneering. This time she had come prepared. Regardless of whether she won or lost, she would make Wang Chong lose face. Let's see what you can do this time. The corners of Su Yiqin's mouth curled up slightly, and she looked very pleased with herself. Without waiting for Wang Chong to speak, Su Yiqin flicked her sleeves and began to clear the chessboard, preparing to make room for her to play with Wang Chong. Wait a moment. Wang Chong suddenly stopped her. He swept his gaze around and said, "Everyone else, get ready as well. Everyone else, get ready. This time, just like last time, I will test all of you." There's no need for that. An even louder voice sounded. Su Yiqin stared at Wang Chong, her head slightly raised, and a trace of craftiness appeared in her eyes. "I've already looked through them for you. Their aptitude is mediocre, and not a single one of them can pass." These words were filled with arrogance, and they infuriated the surrounding crowd, but no one dared to refute them. It was an indisputable fact that Su Yiqin had swept through the entire chess hall like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. She did indeed have the qualifications to say such words. Hee, whether or not I can pass is up to me. What you say is useless." Wang Chong smiled. His words provoked Su Yiqin to the point where her face flushed red. In an instant, she erupted with the most intense battle intent toward Wang Chong. She had always viewed herself as a proud daughter of heaven, so how could she endure Wang Chong's provocation? She immediately exploded at Wang Chong, not caring whether she was still pretending or not. "Useless? Why are they useless? I've already looked through them for you, and they truly are useless. Each and every one of them can't even compare to 1/10 of my strength. If they can pass like this, then who can't? If that's the case, then I don't think there's any need for the chess hall to continue. Because it has no credibility. If they can pass like this, then who will trust them in the future?" Su Yiqin glared at Wang Chong. She didn't care. If this bastard dared to mess around, she would make sure he couldn't back down. The sage of Confucius had also said that the only people in the world who were difficult to deal with were petty people and women. Who told him to offend a woman? She was a vengeful person. Hee. Seeing Su Yiqin so agitated, Wang Chong wasn't angry at all. "Su Chong, do you know why I choose students from the chess hall and why they have to pass the chess hall's examination before they can enter the spirit vein to cultivate? Do you really think that I'm only choosing those who are strong in chess? The art of war has both righteous and strange aspects. Using righteous means to achieve victory through strange means. Some people are good at using righteous means to defeat their opponents with dignified methods. Some people are good at using strange means to defeat their opponents with surprise attacks. For those who are good at righteous means, you ask them to use strange means to defeat them. For those who are good at strange means, you ask them to use righteous means. It's like asking civil officials to kill their enemies and generals to recite poems. This method is completely the opposite. If civil officials don't know how to recite poems and civil officials don't know how to kill their enemies, do you not want them? Do you want to say that they aren't qualified?" Wang Chong said with a smile, his words exuding a carefree and tranquil aura. "Righteous means? Strange means?" Su Yiqin was stunned. She raised her head to look at Wang Chong in confusion. She could be considered to have seen many things and read many books. Moreover, she had been nurtured by a noble clan, so she was even more skilled in this aspect, far surpassing ordinary people. But while she could recognize the words that Wang Chong had said, she couldn't understand what they meant when they were put together. What righteous means and strange means? She had no idea what they meant, and she had never heard anyone mention them before. For a moment, looking at Wang Chong's confident expression, Su Yiqin suddenly felt a little guilty. "That's right." Wang Chong chuckled. He wasn't surprised by Su Yiqin's reaction at all. Due to the development of martial prowess in this world, the art of war wasn't very developed. In the world that Wang Chong had come from, the concept of regular and strange means was something that ordinary people were familiar with. But in this world, it was still an extremely novel concept. Many people had never even heard of it, let alone ideals. Although Su Yiqin was both beautiful and talented, she was clearly limited in this aspect, and her knowledge was practically nil. Wang Chang's next goal was to popularize the concept of righteous means and strange means in the Tang dynasty. With deflecting blade manner as a foundation, he would be able to raise many generals who were skilled in both righteous means and strange means. Right now, he was only trying out a small part of it. Chapter 391. Humans would always feel a little guilty when faced with things they didn't know. Although Su Yiqin was arrogant, talented, and extremely intelligent among women, it was clear that she was still within this category. That's right. Some of these people are good at being upright, while others are good at being strange. Thus, what I need to do is to find out their special traits and teach them in accordance with their aptitude. I don't need to generalize them. A ruler has its strengths, and an inch has its weaknesses. Don't you understand this logic? Furthermore, even if their current performance is useless, as long as they display sufficient potential, they will still be able to pass my test. Wang Chong faintly smiled. That's great. Thank you, Gongzi. Everyone, quickly set up the chessboard. Before Su Yiqin could say anything, the examinees in the chess hall were all roused. Although they didn't understand the words upright and strange, this didn't stop them from understanding one fact. However, this did not prevent them from understanding the fact that they still had a chance to pass the test. When playing against Su Yiqin, everyone was defeated by her one after another, their confidence crumbling. They couldn't even lift their heads. No one had expected that they would have a second chance. They all cheered excitedly. What upright, and strange? I don't understand what nonsense you're spouting. Since you want to give them a chance, then do as you please. Let's play. Su Yiqin couldn't win against Wang Chong with words, nor did she have the confidence to defeat him in an unfamiliar field. Thus, she simply sat down and pulled Wang Chong to the chessboard. As long as I can defeat him, I want to see what else you can use to be arrogant in front of me. Su Yiqin said hatefully in her heart. She had been suppressing her anger for more than a month while Wang Chong was away on a mission in the training camp. She had also been suppressing her ultimate move for more than a month. She wanted to see what else he could use to be arrogant in front of her after he was defeated by her. Seeing Su Yiqin's belly full of anger, Wang Chong snickered in his heart. With a wave of his sleeves, he leisurely sat down in front of her. I'll go first this round. Su Yiqin said angrily, unwilling to pass on the responsibility. What? Wang Chong chuckled. Nonsense, of course it's because of my woman. Just as she was about to blurt out these words, Su Yiqin immediately realized that she was still disguised as a man. Of course, she couldn't say such words. Otherwise, they would be exposed. Can't you let me have a moment? Su Yiqin said with some dissatisfaction. Of course, Wang Chong said without batting an eyelid. In his heart, he was laughing so hard that his belly was about to explode. It wasn't as if he didn't see the movement of Su Yiqin's lips. Until now, she still didn't know that he had already seen through her womanhood. Voila! Almost at the same time, the crowd in the chess hall began moving their tables and chairs and placing down their chessboards. A match was about to begin. For an ordinary person, it was almost impossible to play against 10, 20, or even more people at the same time because it was too mentally exhausting. But for the people in the chess hall, they had long since become accustomed to Wang Chong's terrifying ability in the game of chess, and they even took it for granted. This time, the match began with the match between Wang Chong and Su Yiqin. Wang Chong played white, and Su Yiqin played black. A black stone fell heavily on the corner of the chessboard. As soon as this stone fell, Wang Chong couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Su Yiqin's first move was completely different from last time, and even completely different from all the previous games. As soon as the black stone fell, the style of the entire chessboard changed. There was a strange and fleeting feeling everywhere, completely different from any of the current chess games of the Tang dynasty. Moreover, there was a faint feeling of being targeted at him. Wang Chong raised his head and subconsciously glanced at Su Yiqin across from him. He saw that this proud daughter of the Su family had her head slightly raised, a crafty look in her eyes, and there was a faint sense of pride in her expression. Look down on me. This time I came prepared. The corners of Su Yichin's lips curled up slightly. She only needed one stone to know what Wang Chong was thinking. For the past month or so, she had spent almost every day studying the game between her and Wang Chong. Wang Chong's style, the steps he took, and even his train of thought had all been thoroughly studied, and he had a firm grasp on Su Xiaoshuo's style. Right now, she could guarantee that if Wang Chong continued to play like this, she would definitely be able to target him and crush him from start to finish. If she didn't have a certain level of confidence, how could she have challenged Wang Chong? You've really put in a lot of effort. Wang Chong smiled without saying a word. How could Su Yichin's little thoughts hide from him? Unfortunately, it's useless. Su Yichin thought too simply of him. If this was all he knew, he might really embarrass himself in front of everyone today. However, from the beginning to the end, including the last time, he hadn't used his full strength. Moreover, he didn't only know a single style, path, or game of chess. As the saying goes, virtuous like water, shaped according to the object. His style of chess had long since transcended the path and game of chess. He didn't stick to a single pattern, and he could do whatever he wanted and change according to his opponent. Even if Su Yichin studied all of his games, she would still only be able to grasp the tip of the iceberg in the end. Clap. Without the slightest hesitation, a white stone fell to the ground. It was only one stone, but Su Yichin's expression immediately changed, because she suddenly realized that Wang Chong's moves were completely different from the last time. It was a completely different style. If the previous Wang Chong's style was peerless and elegant, then the current Wang Chong was full of calmness and magnanimity. It was as if he was a completely different person. It was completely not something that could be shown at his age. Didn't you want to know what a normal and unexpected move is? Today, I'll teach you the simplest normal move. I'll use a simple normal move to defeat you. Wang Chong said calmly, with the demeanor of a general. Don't brag here. If you want to show off in front of me, wait until you beat me. Su Yichin was a girl after all. How could she stand this kind of provocation? She was so excited that her face turned red in front of Wang Chong. No matter how a person pretended to be, their personality and temper were there. This was something that couldn't be changed. At this time, Su Yichin had completely forgotten that as a boy, she blushed too often, too much. Wang Chong ignored it and didn't expose her. He continued to play chess with Su Yichin. Cluck, cluck, cluck. One after another, black and white stones fell onto the chessboard. There were only 5 stones, but Su Yichin's face immediately turned pale, because she realized that what Wang Chong said was right. Her painstaking research over the past month had all gone to waste, because what Wang Chong was using now was a completely different style that he had never used before. It was heavy, but it was extremely offensive. The feeling that Wang Chong gave people now was like a heavy sword without a sharp edge. Although it lacked variations, it was powerful. This caused Su Yichin to bear a lot of pressure. In fact, the pressure was even greater than when she faced Wang Chong for the first time. The loudest sound is silent. The way of proper warfare is to use a grand army to destroy all obstacles, to attack first. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. If the enemy moves, I will move first. You don't even understand the simplest way of proper warfare. Wang Chong lifted his head and looked at Su Yichin. He smiled and stood up, walking towards the other examinees. There were a total of more than 20 examinees who participated in the selection. Although all of them were defeated by Su Yichin one by one, and their confidence was almost gone. But among them, there were some who were worth mentioning. What's there to be proud of? I don't believe that I will lose to you. Su Yichin glared at Wang Chong fiercely. She gritted her teeth and made up her mind. No matter what, she had to defeat Wang Chong. Hee. Wang Chong didn't need to turn his head to know what had happened. He ignored it and walked towards the other examinees. But a white stone landed on the ground. Starting from the first one, Wang Chong's feet almost touched the ground as he placed his stones one after another. There were more than 20 examinees, and Wang Chong only took a short while to finish them off. On the contrary, Su Yiqin didn't move at all. The speed at which she placed her stones was much slower than the others. More often than not, when Wang Chong and the other examinees had already placed 4 or 5 stones, Su Yiqin would only place 1 stone. Moreover, she was considered to be faster. Time passed slowly, and the progress of the other examinees soon caught up to Su Yiqin. However, Su Yiqin's complexion was getting paler and paler. The more she studied Wang Chong's chess style, the more she felt that there was a sharpness in Wang Chong's chess style. Every time Wang Chong placed a stone, it was a moment filled with suspense and fear for her. Su Yiqin was still able to deal with it at the start, but when Wang Chong's momentum grew, Wang Chong's chessboard would immediately be swept into disorder. She was completely routed, and she could only tangle with Wang Chong in the corners. "I won't lose, I definitely won't lose." Su Yiqin clenched her fists, her face pale. Someone as proud as her would never accept losing to the same person twice. Moreover, it was a kid who was even younger than her. Su Yiqin definitely couldn't accept this kind of dodging. But just as Su Yiqin was in utter disarray and struggling bitterly, there was a clap on the chessboard. Wang Chong's white stone sounded. The first examinee to pass today had appeared. "Congratulations, you've passed." "That's great." Following a burst of excited cheers, an examinee jumped up in joy. "What kind of joke is this? That guy can pass?" Su Yiqin was already filled with anger, and when she saw Wang Chong let her defeated opponent pass, she finally couldn't hold it in any longer. "Do you know how bad this guy is? He lost at least 100 points to me and he was utterly routed, but you actually let him pass? If someone with this kind of aptitude can pass, then who else can't?" Su Yiqin's face was full of dissatisfaction. "Then how many points did he lose in the end?" Wang Chong said calmly. 96 points. Su Yiqin was taken aback. "That's it? That's why he was able to pass." Chapter 392. "Thank you, Gongzi." That student did not think much of it. He bowed repeatedly to Wang Chong's back and left happily. He had thought that he had no hope this time, but he had actually passed. "Go for it." Wang Chong did not turn back. He waved his hand at the student. Everyone had their strengths and weaknesses, and while playing chess with that student, Wang Chong had long ago discovered that he possessed a tenacity that allowed him to display extraordinary strength. When you thought that he would lose, he did lose. But it was not what you thought. He definitely lasted a lot longer than you expected. That was why Wang Chong had confidently asked Su Yiqin how many points he had lost in the end. A moment later, the second person to pass appeared. "Congratulations, you passed." Wang Chong smiled at a joyous student from Longwei training camp. "Thank you, Gongzi." "Thank you, Gongzi." That student nodded repeatedly. "Are you kidding me? He could even pass it. He doesn't even know how to play Go. This guy doesn't even know the simplest rules of Go." It was one thing for Wang Chong to pass the first one, but seeing that Wang Chong had passed the second one as well, Su Yiqin could no longer hold back her rage. She felt that Wang Chong was purposely making things difficult for her. She had played with this guy before. Most of the time, he did not even understand the scale of the game. She had to remind him before he would know. And every time, he would laugh foolishly. It was infuriating. It was fine if other people passed, but if Wang Chong did not give her a convincing reason, she would not be able to accept it. This was simply messing around. "Hee, you only saw him play randomly. Do you really think that he doesn't know? Lin Changting, recite the rules of Go to him." Wang Chong waved his hand. Lin Changting looked at Wang Chong, his eyes filled with doubt. Su Yiqin was right. He had never played Go before. Therefore, it was not wrong for Su Yiqin to say that he did not know how to play the game. What really surprised him was Wang Chong. Wang Chong was so sure that he knew the rules of Go and could recite them. Yes, young master." Although Lin Changting was surprised, he quickly recited it. A long paragraph of Go chants flowed out of his mouth without any hesitation. Su Yiqin's eyes finally revealed a look of surprise when she heard this long paragraph of over 1,000 words of Go chants. She had played with this guy before and he made her feel like a fool. However, Even some students with good Go skills might not be able to recite such a long paragraph of Go chants. However, the fool in his eyes actually recited it so smoothly. This made Su Yichin's jaw drop. His appearance before and after were like clouds and mud, as if he was a completely different person. She couldn't believe that the same person could be so different from her and Wang Chong. Moreover, how did Wang Chong see through it? It's not that he doesn't know how to play, it's just that he hasn't come into contact with Go for a long time. His thoughts are unconventional, and he's not restricted by the rules of Go. He hopes to take an unconventional path and come up with a unique method to defeat his opponent. But because he hasn't dabbled in Go for a long time, he doesn't know much about it, and he doesn't have anyone to guide him. That's why he looks like a fool in the eyes of others, not even knowing the rules of Go. Actually, this is the art of surprise, of the art of war. I'm afraid that even he doesn't know this. Lin Chongting, come to my room to look for me after this matter is over. I have something for you. Wang Chong said. This Lin Chongting's talent wasn't inferior to Sun Jiming's. If he was nurtured well, he might become the new, twin paragons of the empire of the Tang dynasty. Thank you, young master. Lin Chongting was overjoyed. He had only wanted to pass the test, but he hadn't expected to receive Wang Chong's recognition. This was truly an unexpected reward. Surprise? Or, Papatin. Don't try to fool me. Su Yichin retorted indignantly. She couldn't understand a single word that Wang Chong had said. Even now, she felt that Wang Chong's surprise, or proper, was something that he had purposely made up to humiliate her. If it was really that formidable, given her background, how could she have never heard of it? Wang Chong chuckled, not bothering to explain. Su Yichin was wrong. Regardless of whether it was the first or the second student, Wang Chong wasn't lying. These examinees did indeed have some potential. If they were nurtured well, they would become the brightest generals of the empire. In his previous life, the reason why the Tang dynasty only had 100 generals was because they didn't have enough discerning talent scouts. But in this world, who could be more insightful and able to teach them better than him, the supreme war saint, the supreme marshal of the Central Plains in his previous life? In the 3 great training camps, Longwei, Shunwei, and Kunwu, he was actually the supreme instructor, just that no one knew about it. The match continued. Even though 2 people had passed, a large number of people had still been eliminated. From this aspect, Su Yichin's words weren't wrong. Deflecting blade manner had just been established, and the chess skills of many of the examinees were nothing to scoff at. But Wang Chong's original intention wasn't to turn all of them into chess experts. Rather, he wanted to use this method to create that kind of atmosphere. Through the art of chess, he wanted to nurture their appreciation for the art of war. Even if these people couldn't become generals. But as long as they displayed even the slightest bit of proficiency in the art of war, when they entered the army in the future, they would all become lieutenants, commandants, deputy generals. Just think about it, with hundreds or even thousands of these basic troops who were well versed in the art of war, the Tang dynasty would be invincible. Wang Chong's ultimate goal was to create such a valiant and skilled military officer who was well versed in the art of war. And deflecting blade manner was the best cradle for grooming such an officer. Time slowly passed, and Su Yichin's situation was already hanging by a thread. The heavy sword was edgeless, and the great technique was useless. Wang Chong's Grand Master swept through the chessboard, almost sweeping away all of Su Yichin's chess pieces. On the chessboard, Wang Chong didn't use any special methods at all. Every move he made was methodical, and Su Yichin could see it clearly. But it was precisely this ordinary chessboard that had forced Su Yichin into desperate straits. Su Yichin's face was pale, and beads of sweat were forming on her forehead. This was a sign of intense mental strain. Every move of Wang Chong's seemed to exhaust all of her mental energy. Congratulations, you've passed. Alright, that's all for today. The list of those who have passed has been released. I hope that you'll work harder next time and pass the examination. Wang Chong's voice suddenly sounded by her ear. Upon hearing this voice, Su Yichin finally couldn't hold back her anger any longer. Wang Chong, what do you mean by this? Su Yichin raised her head and flew into a rage. What do you mean by the list of those who have passed has been released? Are you saying that I didn't pass? All of the dissatisfaction in her heart exploded. While she was still playing, Wang Chong had already announced the list of those who had passed. Didn't that mean that she hadn't passed? Everyone here, from the examiners to the examinees, had been defeated by her one by one. Could it be that she was inferior to these ordinary examinees? Hee, don't you know? Take a look at the chess jar beside you. How many chess pieces are there? Wang Chong wasn't angry at all. What chess pieces? Su Yichin was at the peak of her anger. But in the next moment, she touched the chess pieces in the jar beside her. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over her head. Su Yichin's entire body froze, and she suddenly couldn't say anything. The black chess jar beside her was empty. There were only 4 or 5 chess pieces left. Wang Chong was right. This round had indeed ended. Take a look at the other jar beside you. How many white chess pieces are there? Wang Chong said. Her heart calmed down. Su Yichin didn't need to turn her head to know that the other jar must be empty as well. In this round, Wang Chong's chess moves were steady and steady. But for some unknown reason, the pressure he gave off was unbelievably huge. In this round, Su Yichin actually didn't manage to eat any of his chess pieces. Her gaze swept over the chessboard. Su Yichin felt bitter in her heart. On the vast chessboard, the center was almost entirely occupied by Wang Chong's white chess pieces. Only a few corners and scattered spots were occupied by her black chess pieces. It looked extremely pitiful. In that instant, Su Yichin vaguely understood something. Clatter, clatter. Wang Chong didn't say anything. He picked up the black chess pieces in his other chess box and poured them in front of Su Yichin. Take a look for yourself. See if there are 100 chess pieces here. You've lost more than you've eaten. You've basically suffered a crushing defeat. In fact, you've lost even more than some examinees. The chess hall has its own rules. You can't pass this round. Wang Chong said indifferently. Su Yichin's face turned from red to red, and finally became deathly pale. Only at the very last moment did she realize that she had lost again, and even more miserably than the last time. Su Yichin's lips trembled. As proud as she was, how could she bear this kind of blow? Keep working hard. Even though I feel that your aptitude isn't suitable for the chess hall. Wang Chong said indifferently, his hands clasped behind his back. It was this sentence that infuriated Su Yichin. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion, and the entire chess hall trembled. In front of Wang Chong, Su Yichin stretched out her fist and smashed the chessboard and the table in front of her into smithereens. Wood splinters flew everywhere. In front of Su Yichin, these incomparably hard tables and chairs made of cedar wood were like paper, and countless wooden fibers were even shaken off. Su Yichin's strength was so great that even after the cedar table was smashed to pieces, its 4 legs still embedded deep into the floor. Bastard! Su Yichin finally exploded, her furious voice ringing through the entire chess hall. She couldn't care less anymore. Even if her identity was exposed today, she would teach Wang Chong a good lesson. Chapter 393. Su Yichin's face paled, and she felt like her lungs were about to explode. She was the proud daughter of the Longwei training camp, and many young masters of aristocratic families would bow their heads and respectfully call her Sister Qin, but she didn't even bat an eye at them. Every single one of these men was lustful, and their talent was mediocre. They weren't worthy of Su Yichin's attention at all. Who said that women were inferior to men? She, Su Yichin, wanted to trample all men beneath her feet. She was used to being arrogant, and she was used to looking down on men. Su Yichin could never have imagined that she would be humiliated by Wang Chong in the tiny deflecting blade manner. What are you trying to do? With a flash of light, a white silhouette appeared between Wang Chong and Su Yichin. Wang Chenner carried a silver greatsword on her back, and her expression was as cold as an unmelting glacier as she stared at Su Yichin. She couldn't tell that Su Yichin was a woman disguised as a man. In this aspect, women seem to lack the ability to distinguish between men and women. Huang Qian'er only knew that if anyone dared to touch Wang Chong, she would send them flying out of the window. This handsome young man seemed to be quite strong, but he was definitely not a match for her. Su Yiqin didn't even look at Huang Qian'er. Her eyes were red, and she felt like she was about to explode. Wang Chong, you're going too far. Su Yiqin's chest heaved. She had never suffered such humiliation before. If Wang Chong didn't give her an explanation, he shouldn't blame her for beating him up into a pig's head and hanging him on a flagpole. Hee. Seeing Su Yiqin explode in anger, Wang Chong's lips curled up into an almost imperceptible smile. Su Yiqin wasn't mistaken about one thing. He had indeed purposely not allowed her to pass. Moreover, there was one thing that she didn't know. Wang Chong was deliberately provoking her and making her fly into a rage. As the most talented woman in the Tang dynasty and the best in logistics, Su Yiqin's ability had reached a certain level. In the Tang dynasty, almost no one could compare with her. If anyone could obtain the help of Su Yiqin and the Su family, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. At least in terms of logistics, there was nothing to worry about. Before the troops and horses move, the rations and fodder move first. A war that would last for 2 months would require 2 years to prepare the logistics and rations. The importance of logistics was obvious. In the other world that Wang Chong came from, that fellow called Napoleon had failed on the verge of success precisely because of a lack of logistics. A great undertaking had been wasted, and decades of effort had been wasted. Logistics was too trivial. It involved countless aspects and was innumerable. It needed wisdom, but not just wisdom. In this aspect, even if one's martial arts were higher than the heavens, it would be useless. Wang Chong knew that he had no talent in this aspect. In his last life, when the army was defeated, he was basically in a state of no rations, no pay, and no logistics. If he really had a formidable logistics expert like Su Yiqin, he wouldn't have lost so quickly. It was a rare opportunity for the talented daughter of the Su clan, Su Yiqin, to disguise herself as Su Chong and come to Deflecting Blade Manor to challenge him. If Wang Chong were to let go of this opportunity, he wouldn't be Wang Chong. Su Chong, you seem to be very unconvinced? Wang Chong said calmly. Convinced? About what? There isn't a single person here who is a match for me. All of them have been utterly defeated by me. Tell me, other than you, who else here is more formidable than me? Su Yiqin pointed at the examinees around her, unable to restrain her anger. Those who were weak had passed, while those who were strong had failed. How could there be such a logic in the world? She could sense that Wang Chong was intentionally making things difficult for her. Even if she had to expose her identity, she would still teach this bastard a lesson. Do you think that they are weak? Or perhaps, do you think that you are very strong? Wang Chong looked at Su Yiqin, the smile on his face infuriating. Am I not? Su Yiqin countered with a question. Don't think that she is a 3-year-old child. Wang Chong's excuses can't fool her. Let me ask you, how long have you been playing chess? How long have they been playing chess? Wang Chong said calmly, as if he couldn't see the rage on Su Yiqin's face. What do you mean? Upon hearing Wang Chong's question, Su Yiqin suddenly calmed down. If I'm not wrong, Su Chong, you have been playing chess since you were young, right? By now, it has probably been more than 10 years, right? But these people? Wang Chong turned around and swept his gaze across these students. The longest they have been playing chess is 1 or 2 years, and the shortest is only 1 or 2 months. Although their chess skills are very poor right now, they have great potential. Potential? What do you mean? Su Yiqin said. This time, even Huang Qian'er's attention was drawn. Although she wasn't participating in the match, she could clearly see everything that was happening at the entrance of the chess hall. Even she could tell that Wang Chong had something against this Su Chong fellow. But this was also his fault for being too arrogant. Huang Qian'er had thought that Wang Chong would find a random reason to deal with him. Or perhaps use his identity as the master of Deflecting Blade Manor to order him to leave. But from the looks of it, Wang Chong wasn't just spouting nonsense. It's very simple. Think about it. One is a grown shrub, and the other is the seed of a nanmo. If you want to build a house, Do you want a bush or a seed of a nanma tree? Wang Chong stared at Su Yiqin. What do you mean? Are you saying that I'm that shrub? Su Yiqin's eyes blazed with fury. Hee, although it's just a metaphor, that's more or less what I mean. Although the students I chose aren't good at chess, they are like nanma seeds. As long as they are nurtured properly, they will have limitless potential. Even you, although your chess skills are very high, this is basically the limit of your achievements. Your potential has already been completely unearthed, and there's no more room for growth. This is the reason why I eliminated you. Wang Chong said calmly. Bastard. Su Yiqin finally exploded. Although Wang Chong had said so much, he was basically saying the same thing. Your strength has reached its limit, and there's no more room for you to grow. How could someone as proud as Su Yiqin be able to stand it? I'll kill you no matter what. Su Yiqin was on the verge of insanity. Without a second thought, stellar energy surged from her body as she reached out to grab Wang Chong. This casual grab had actually created a thunderous roar, and even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes. Boom. But in the next moment, there was a loud boom, and a slender palm as translucent as white jade slashed in, accurately striking Su Yiqin's arm. Boom. Stellar energy shot out in all directions. Su Yiqin's furious strike had actually been blocked by Huang Qian'er. Young master, I advise you to conduct yourself with dignity. Huang Qian'er said coldly, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Even now, she had no idea that she was facing a girl just like her. Like a bucket of cold water had been poured over her, Su Yiqin suddenly calmed down. Who are you? I was wondering who it was. So it's you, fairy of dainty hands. When did you run over and become someone's servant? Su Yiqin hadn't recognized her at the start. But when she realized that the icy beauty at Wang Chong's side was the famed fairy of dainty hands, Huang Qian'er, her entire face changed. Many people believed that beauties would have a good relationship with each other, but it was the exact opposite. Beautiful women hated other women the most, especially women as beautiful as themselves. Or you recognize me? I don't care who you are, but if you dare to touch him, don't blame me for being rude. Even though I don't like him either. Huang Qian'er coldly said. Wang Chong speechlessly rolled his eyes. Why did she add that last line? Wouldn't it have been better if she hadn't? He really couldn't understand these women. Su Chong, it's useless. You won't be able to do anything here. Moreover, as I said, your potential has reached its limit, and that's it. If you're not convinced, you can leave now. Wang Chong didn't miss this opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Bastard, you want me to leave? I'm not leaving. It would have been better if Wang Chong hadn't said anything, but now that Wang Chong had said it, Su Yiqin actually didn't want to leave. Her personality would never allow her to be led away by Wang Chong. Furthermore, with Fairy of Dainty Hands, Huang Qian'er, around, she knew that she couldn't do anything rash. Of the direct descendants of the great clans of the capital, Huang Qian'er was ranked third. Although Su Yiqin wasn't convinced, she had to admit that Huang Qian'er's strength was probably above hers. In a fight with her, she wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. Don't get too happy. Aren't you trying to say that this is all I'm capable of and that I can't defeat you? Just you wait, I'll definitely trample you beneath my feet and return the humiliation you gave me 100-fold. After saying that, Su Yiqin turned around and left, not staying for a moment longer. Gongzi, should we chase him out? There's no need for such a person to remain here. Wei Anfang suddenly approached from the side and whispered. Hearing those words, Wang Chong couldn't help but smile. Wei Anfang was indeed a blockhead who didn't know how to flirt. Why would he chase away a beauty like Su Yiqin? He couldn't wait to stay. There's no need to bother with him. Men, clean up the place. Also, arrange for the students who just passed to be sent to the spirit vein. Yes, Gongzi. Wei Anfang nodded his head and agreed to it. After leaving the chess hall, Wang Chong headed straight for the training camp. After so long, it was about time for him to meet his instructor, Zhao Qianqiu. Passing through more than half of the training camp, Wang Chong finally met with Zhao Qianqiu at the main peak of Kunwa training camp. Hee, you're finally back. Upon seeing Wang Chong walk in, Zhao Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He immediately stood up from his seat and walked toward Wang Chong with widened strides. Upon seeing Zhao Qianqiu, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh. Once upon a time, Wang Chong had only gone there for the sake of Zhao Qianqiu's reputation in his previous life and the halo of Dusk Stallion under his name. But unknowingly, a deep bond had been forged between the two of them. If not for Zhao Qianqiu's thousandly fragrance, he might have really died in that forest. Taking in a deep breath, just as Zhao Qianqiu was about to walk over, Wang Chong suddenly got down on one knee and bowed respectfully to Zhao Qianqiu with the most solemn military etiquette. "Teacher, thank you." Wang Chong's voice echoed in the hall. From this moment onward, regardless of whether it was in terms of status or heart, Wang Chong viewed Zhao Qianqiu as his teacher, a teacher for life. Chapter 394. Wang Chong, what are you doing? Just a few steps away from Wang Chong, Zhao Qianqiu halted with a look of bewilderment. In the past, Wang Chong had never treated him with such seriousness when they interacted. "Thank you, teacher." If not for teacher, Wang Chong might have already died on the way back to the capital. Wang Chong said gravely, "Hee, I was still wondering what it was." Get up, get up. You're the student I'm most proud of. Do you really think that I didn't prepare anything for this training camp mission?" Zhao Qianqiu chuckled nonchalantly. Wang Chong didn't say anything more and stood up. Naturally, his thoughts and state of mind were different from what Zhao Qianqiu had imagined. However, there was no need for him to speak of this. Come. How are you feeling? How is your recovery?" Zhao Qianqiu asked. After rescuing Wang Chong from the forest and sending him back to the Wang clan, Zhao Qianqiu hadn't visited the Wang clan much. It wasn't appropriate for an instructor like him to interfere in the conflict between King Qi, the Yao clan, and the king of Song and the Wang clan. A soldier was a soldier, and it was best for him to stay out of politics. This was also an unspoken rule of the military. A true soldier would try to stay as far away from politics as possible. Besides, after sending Wang Chong back to the Wang clan, he would be well taken care of even without Zhao Qianqiu's presence. This was also the reason why Zhao Qianqiu didn't ask about it. A clan of generals and ministers like the Wang clan would surely have more resources than an instructor like him. It's fortunate that I've mostly recovered. There shouldn't be any repercussions. Wang Chong said as he sat on a chair. The main source of the damage to Wang Chong came from that arrow. The destructive power it carried had dealt a heavy blow to Wang Chong. If it was any other person, it would take at least 2 to 3 months for him to recover. However, Wang Chong had exchanged for the gold organs, and the vital parts of his organs were far stronger than the average person's. Therefore, although it had been less than a month, Wang Chong could already move freely without any obstacles. That's good. During this time, I was still worried. That would be great. Saying so, Zhao Qianqiu returned to his seat and flicked his sleeves. Pa! A shadow flew out like an arrow, heading straight for Wang Chong. Wang Chong reached out with his palm, almost subconsciously grabbing it. Lowering his head, he saw that it was a rolled-up book. The book was not opened, but Wang Chong saw the 2 words, "Blackbird," at the beginning, and his heart immediately tightened. As expected, Zhao Qianqiu's voice sounded in his ears. "You weren't around for the training camp's mission, but I've already handed it over to you in advance. This is the halo of Dusk Stallion you wanted. Take it and take a good look. You can ask me if you have any questions. But don't count on it too much. It's said that this cultivation technique is extremely difficult to cultivate, and I've never cultivated it before, so I can't give you much guidance." "Thank you, teacher." Wang Chong was overjoyed. In an instant he felt a heavy weight on his hands. Even though he had taken such a huge risk and nearly died in the forest, in the end he had still obtained the most valuable as well as the most underestimated cultivation technique in the entire training camp. In his previous life, the halo of Dusk Stallion had been shelved in the training camp, and almost no one had managed to learn it. But he had finally achieved something that no one had been able to in his previous life. The halo of Dusk Stallion finally belonged to him. In that instant, Wang Chong tightly gripped the book in his hands, his heart filled with joy. "Right, teacher, when you were rushing over, did you see several groups of people?" Wang Chong kept the halo of Dusk Stallion and suddenly asked. "What's wrong?" Zhao Qinqiu's eyebrows shot up. Wang Chong's words seemed to be pointing to something. Without hiding anything, Wang Chong revealed what he had sensed while hiding underground. Even though he had been pursued by one group that day, from what happened later, it was clear that there were several other groups. Even though these people had come for him as well, they had their own plans, clearly not working together. And judging from the number of people, there were far more than just two groups. Forget about the King of Song and the Yao clan, Wang Chong just couldn't figure out what was going on. Moreover, wasn't the King of Song and the Yao clan working together? Was there a need for them to split into two groups? The more Wang Chong thought about the events of that day, the stranger he found them. Unfortunately, he was limited by his own circumstances and couldn't take a closer look. After hearing Wang Chong's description, Zhao Qinqiu frowned. We also checked the place where you were hiding. The footprints on the ground were extremely messy, and there was indeed more than one group of people. On top of that, I was moving much earlier than you think, and during that period of time, we did see other people. However, we were too far away, and the other party avoided us as soon as they saw us. Zhao Qinqiu fell into deep contemplation. Logically speaking, Wang Chong's assault should have been a simple case of assassination. But from Wang Chong's description, it didn't seem to be as simple as it seemed. But when it came to politics, even a pure military man like Zhao Qinqiu felt a headache coming on. He could come up with the idea of releasing a tiger in the middle of the night to train his students, but when it came to complicated politics, he really couldn't do anything about it. However, I did manage to find the arrow you spoke of. Zhao Qianqiu suddenly stood up, and before Wang Chong's astonished gaze, he walked to the wall of the room, opened up a secret compartment, and took out an object. An arrow? Wang Chong stared at the object in Zhao Qianqiu's hands doubtfully. It was just a black arrowhead, and it was only the length of a knuckle. We found this at the place where you were attacked and assassinated. Only the arrowhead remains, the rest of it has been taken away. Even this arrowhead was found in the soil more than 100 feet away from where you were injured, after repeated searching. If not for the fact that we searched the area repeatedly to track you down, we wouldn't have been able to find it. Based on our deductions, this should be left behind by the steel arrow that injured you. Saying so, Zhao Qianqiu walked over and passed the arrowhead to Wang Chong. With a grim expression, Wang Chong examined the arrowhead carefully. There was almost nothing left on the shaft of the arrow, leaving only a black arrowhead. At first glance, this arrowhead seemed extremely ordinary, no different from other arrowheads. But upon closer inspection, Wang Chong noticed something different. On the surface of the arrowhead, there were some fine inscriptions. These were the traces of inscriptions. However, due to the fact that the arrowhead was black, it was impossible to notice them if one didn't pay attention. Not only so, upon closer inspection, Wang Chong made another surprising discovery. The material used to forge this arrowhead was extremely unique. It wasn't any ordinary metal, Shen metal, or Wuzi steel. Wang Chong had forged quite a few Wuzi steel swords in the past, so he was extremely sensitive to the amount of metal used. At the moment, he was the only one who could obtain Wuzi steel. It was impossible for anyone else to obtain it. As such, its quality was clearly inferior to Wuzi steel. Judging from its weight, Wang Chong could tell that the quality of this metal was somewhere between Shen metal and Shen metal. It was infinitely close to Shen metal, but at the same time, there seemed to be something else in it. We have looked into the period of time you were recuperating. This arrowhead is made from a mixture of Shen metal, and some other unique metal powder. Furthermore, the structure of the arrowhead has undergone a unique forging process as well, causing the internal structure of the arrowhead to be relatively loose. I believe that you should have noticed this as well. Zhao Qianqiu glanced at Wang Chong as he spoke. Wang Chong nodded. Indeed. This arrowhead was slightly lighter than a Shen metal arrowhead. He could already tell that. This will undoubtedly lower the sturdiness of the arrowhead, and it's due to this that the arrowhead would shatter into pieces upon colliding with something sturdy. The arrowhead and the arrow shaft would shatter and scatter in different places. Even so, this method will greatly increase the speed at which stellar energy flows through the arrowhead, making it easier for an expert archer to bring out their prowess and increase the destructive power of their archery. To put it simply, this is a unique archery technique that utilizes the stellar energy of a cultivator to injure others. Unlike ordinary archery techniques, which rely on the sharpness of the arrow to pierce through the vitals of the target. Even if it doesn't hit a vitals, it can still cause severe damage to one's body. Those who are proficient in this unique archery technique are definitely not ordinary archery experts. Based on this, we should be able to find the person who shot you, Zhao Qianqiu concluded. During this period of time, he hadn't been slacking off. He had found many clues on the arrowhead, and based on these clues, he would definitely be able to find the person who ambushed Wang Chong. As for what Wang Chong said about the appearance of 2 or 3 groups of people, he really didn't know about it. Wang Chong fell silent. He already understood what was going on. Even though the iron arrow was formidable and was imbued with the inscription of sharpness, it still struck the heart-protecting mirror of the Uzun cavalrymen. The 300 cavalrymen of the Uzun Empire were all heavily armored cavalrymen, and they were imbued with layer after layer of inscription of toughness. When the iron arrow struck the heart-protecting mirror, it was jolted into pieces by its own strength. That was why Zhao Qianqiu was able to pick up a part of the arrowhead. To be able to uncover so many clues from a single arrowhead was already an unexpected harvest for Wang Chong. Thank you, teacher. After chatting with Zhao Qianqiu for a while in the main hall of the Kunwa training camp, Wang Chong bade farewell and left. He had delayed his breakthrough to the true martial realm for so long. If everything was ready, he would finally be able to make a breakthrough. After leaving the main peak, Wang Chong returned straight to the Deflecting Blade Manor. In the Deflecting Blade Manor, Wang Chong had a cultivation chamber that belonged to him. Compared to the training camp, the Deflecting Blade Manor belonged to him. It would be much safer for him to make a breakthrough to the true martial realm here. Huang Qianer, guard me. After saying those words, Wang Chong immediately stepped into his secret chamber. At this moment, Wang Chong's heart was thumping in anticipation. Chapter 395. Stepping into the secret chamber and closing the door, Wang Chong immediately took out the Halo of Dusk Stallion book that Zhao Qianqiu had given him. The regret from his last life had finally been made up for. The excitement in Wang Chong's heart was indescribable. I finally got it. Wang Chong gripped the book in his hand, his chest heaving up and down. Wang Chong did not know much about the Halo of Dusk Stallion, but just the information he had obtained from the mouths of his seniors was enough to stun anyone who knew. The number of levels of the Halo of Dusk Stallion was infinite. As long as one was strong enough, one could theoretically upgrade the Halo of Dusk Stallion without limit. Even though the energy required to upgrade it would be an astronomical figure that warriors could only sigh in amazement and never imagine. In the war against the otherworldly invaders, the strength of an individual was too meager. Even someone as powerful as the war god So Yong-sun had ultimately died in the capital, unable to reverse the tides. But the Halo of Dusk Stallion was the only thing that could completely reverse the course of a battle with individual strength. If there is one thing that can help us in our current situation, it is the Halo of Dusk Stallion. Alas, we can no longer obtain it. These were the words that a senior had once said to Wang Chong, filled with endless regret. But now, everything was different. Opening the book, line after line of words immediately entered his eyes. They were not the ancient seal characters commonly used in ancient supreme techniques, but the regular script that Wang Chong was all too familiar with. This was clearly not the original but a hand-copied copy. In the 27th year of the Great Sui's reign, Yuhanzitong received the order of the Holy Emperor, the Son of Heaven, to hand-copy this book. The first majestic paragraph on the slightly yellowed paper caused Wang Chong's eyes to twitch, and an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. It's actually a handwritten copy from the Great Sui dynasty. Wang Chong's eyes madly twitched as an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. This Halo of Dusk Stallion was actually a manuscript from the era of Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty. Wang Chong had not expected this. But what surprised Wang Chong even more was the 3 words in this paragraph, Han Zitong. Not many people knew about this person, but his other name was known by everyone. Even after hundreds of years, his name was still very well known among the children of the aristocratic families. Han Qinhu. He was one of the 4 great generals who served under Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty. The other 3 great generals of the Sui dynasty, Yang Su, He Ruoxiao, and Shi Wansu, were collectively known as the 4 pillars of the empire, just like Fomin Linta, Gao Xianji, Geshu Han, and Wang Shogui. However, the reputation of the 4 great generals of the Sui dynasty was far above the latter. Han Qinhu, in particular, was a master of both the pen and the sword. He was known as the god of war during the era of Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty. With just 500 people, they had conquered the Qin dynasty of Jiangnan like a hot knife through butter. This person's status in the great Sui dynasty was like the sun at high noon, just like his grandfather. But perhaps, his reputation was even higher than his grandfather's. Emperor Wen of the Great Sui praised him, spreading the might of the empire for 10,000 li, declaring the empire in a single corner. His lofty name fills the universe, his flourishing achievements illuminate the earth. His name has been heard of since ancient times, rarely heard of. This praise for him had reached the pinnacle. Wang Chong had not expected that the person who had hand-copied the Halo of Dusk Stallion would be him. What's going on here? Wang Chong was somewhat taken aback. This was somewhat different from what he had imagined. Wang Chong had originally believed that the book that Zhao Qianqiu had casually tossed to him would be about the same as other martial arts. It was just a book with the mantra for the martial arts written on it. However, this was clearly not the case in front of them. 27th year of the Great Sui dynasty? Hand-copied on the orders of the Holy Emperor, the Son of Heaven? Just what's going on here? The Halo of Dusk Stallion might be formidable, but surely Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty didn't have to order a great general like Han Qinhu to hand-copy it? Wang Chong's brows were fiercely twitching, his mind in turmoil. The Holy Emperor that Han Qinhu spoke of could only be Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty. In the final years of the Sui dynasty, the emperor was renowned for his tyranny and had single-handedly caused the world to descend into chaos, resulting in the Tang dynasty replacing the Sui. But in the early years of the Sui dynasty, the politics were clear and the economy and commerce flourished. History called it the reign of founding emperor. This was completely different from the final years of the Sui dynasty. Even though the Tang had replaced the Sui, the history books had to admit that although the Sui dynasty was corrupt, Emperor Wen was a rarely seen wise sovereign. But what Wang Chong did not understand was why Emperor Wen had ordered an imperial great general like Han Qinhu to hand-copy the Halo of Dusk Stallion. Wang Chong suddenly had a feeling that this Halo of Dusk Stallion was not as simple as he had first imagined. Or perhaps the fact that the Halo of Dusk Stallion had not been passed down, resulting in it becoming extinct, was not as simple as negligence or a lack of a suitable successor. Perhaps there was an even deeper reason behind the loss of the Halo of Dusk Stallion. Lowering his head, Wang Chong continued reading. Yu Yan, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Although the Halo of Dusk Stallion is powerful, it can easily attract unexpected disasters. The Holy Emperor has decreed that those without astonishing aptitude and talent are not allowed to cultivate it. Those who are not the pillars of the empire are not allowed to cultivate it. Those who are not loyal and have no evil in their hearts are not allowed to cultivate it. Those who are not courageous, have astonishing willpower, and do not fear death are not allowed to cultivate it. These 4 are not to be cultivated. The Halo of Dusk Stallion has a long history and was not created by this dynasty. In the previous dynasty, countless people died because they cultivated this technique. Their heads rolled and their clans were exterminated. Those who come later should be cautious. This technique is of great importance and has far-reaching implications. It was not created by this dynasty alone. Those who come later should be cautious and not lightly pass it on to others. Only those who cultivate this technique must remember that I have a word of advice. Be careful of your descendants. The last sentence was chilling to the bone. And then there was the heavy red seal of a great general. After reading these words on this page, Wang Chong was dumbfounded, unable to speak for some time. Han Qinhu was an imperial great general of the former Sui, his martial arts unparalleled. At the very least, he was on the same level as Zhang Shogui and Wang Zhongxi, and he could only be higher. Wang Chong truly could not understand what it was that made Han Qinhu so apprehensive. Even in this manuscript, he hesitated to mention it, as if he was afraid of revealing something. Just what was it that made the mighty great general of the former Sui so apprehensive? To put it more bluntly, he was afraid. All was quiet. Wang Chong sat in the secret room, his mind in turmoil, his entire body frozen. Wang Chong suddenly realized that this halo of dusk stallion seemed to be hiding some great secret that he did not understand. Time slowly passed, and after some time, Wang Chong finally gave a long sigh. No matter what sort of secret the halo of dusk stallion hid, after paying so much and almost dying, Wang Chong could not easily give up. This was not just Wang Chong's problem, but also related to Wang Chong's plan to change the future. Without the halo of dusk stallion, he would not be able to deal with those otherworldly invaders. Even if Han Qinhu said that the halo of dusk stallion had great dangers, that it would bring about a great calamity, he still had to cultivate it. Han Qinhu's solemn words might not be groundless. I can only investigate them in the future, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Once he had decided on something, he could not easily change it. Moreover, although Han Qinhu was a great general of the former Sui, the war god, Wang Chong felt that this war god of the former Sui was not necessarily omniscient and omnipotent. At the very least, Han Qinhu would never have predicted that the former Sui would be replaced by the Tang dynasty. Moreover, Han Qinhu had mentioned that the halo of dusk stallion had 4 prohibitions, but these 4 prohibitions had been broken long ago. Wang Chong would not change his thoughts, resolve and plans just because of a few words from several centuries ago. Composing himself, Wang Chong flipped to the first page and continued reading. It was like he had gone from a wretched land to a glimmer of hope. Wang Chong suddenly felt his entire body lighten. Other than the warning on the first page of the halo of dusk stallion, the contents of the rest of the book exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. They were normal and calm, just like a very ordinary mantra for a technique. Although the words were very profound, to Wang Chong, who had seen even more profound and cryptic words, this was truly nothing. Casting aside his thoughts, Wang Chong quickly immersed himself in the mantra. The first cycle of the halo of dusk stallion was not very difficult, but one needed to be at the dragon bone level to cultivate it. Although it seemed like a simple requirement, it was actually extremely harsh. This was because the vast majority of the great clans, generals, and ministers only had the cultivation of the tiger bone level. Those who could reach the dragon bone level were few and far between. Basically, only the princes and princesses of the imperial household, or the important ministers and favored ministers of the court who had been rewarded by the Holy Emperor, could reach this requirement. Because Wang Chong cultivated the dragon bone art, he had barely managed to form the flood dragon bone, so he had just barely reached the requirements of the halo of dusk stallion. I was truly lucky. Wang Chong rejoiced in his heart. The flood dragon bone was probably the lowest requirement for this technique. If he had not been reincarnated, he probably would not have been able to cultivate the halo of dusk stallion, even if he had obtained it. At this moment, Wang Chong somewhat understood why Han Qinhu had said in his book that those who were not the pillars of the empire and had absolute loyalty could not cultivate this technique. This was because other than members of the imperial clan, only the pillars of the empire had a chance of receiving a dragon bone level technique as a reward. This time, Instructor Zhao has probably misunderstood. A thought flashed through his mind, and Wang Chong suddenly seemed to understand something. Given the level of the halo of dusk stallion, it could not have easily fallen into his hands. There was an 80 to 90% chance that Zhao Qianqiu and the other officers of the training camp had misunderstood, believing that this was his grandfather's idea. Given his grandfather's identity, status, and influence, he was naturally more than qualified to cultivate the halo of dusk stallion. But Wang Chong was well aware that this was definitely a misunderstanding. But even if he understood this, Wang Chong couldn't possibly explain it to him. Sometimes, there were mistakes, and no matter what the training camp had misunderstood. But this technique truly was something he needed. Calming his mind, Wang Chong quickly began to cultivate the first cycle of the Halo of Dusk Stallion. The path of the Halo of Dusk Stallion was grand and domineering. Its first cycle required one to pass through 27 major acupuncture points, some of which were fatal or grievous. Let alone a true martial realm expert, even a profound martial realm expert would find this path fraught with danger and find it difficult to accomplish. But Wang Chong was different. What he possessed was the knowledge and experience of the Holy Emperor realm. Buzz. Chapter 396. With the vision and experience of the Saint Martial realm, driving the first layer of the Halo of Dusk Stallion was a daunting experience without any mishaps. Kakla. The crisp creaking of bones came from his body, and with a rumble, the 27 acupoints opened one by one. Several hours later, as the final acupoint was opened, the first circulation in Wang Chong's body finally took shape. At Wang Chong's dantian, the quantitative change turned to qualitative change. A green-black circulation the size of a thumb suddenly took shape. Although small, it was incomparably heavy. It exuded an aura as heavy as a mountain and a light as sharp as a blade. The Halo of Dusk Stallion. At this moment, the aura exuding from Wang Chong's body became several times heavier, and a brand new energy surged through his body. Not only that, when Wang Chong formed the Halo of Dusk Stallion, the quantitative change turned to qualitative change, and the final condition for breaking into the true martial realm was fulfilled. Boom! The laws of the world seemed to have been touched, and Wang Chong felt his mind shake, as if his entire soul had been jolted out of his body. At the same time, a brand new energy, imbued with the laws of the world, surged into his mind from spacetime. Like rain after a long drought, Wang Chong's psychic energy, origin energy, and physical strength all instantly swelled by twofold. Not only that, the invisible energy that had been imprisoning Wang Chong this entire time also exploded. Wang Chong had already reached a bottleneck in the origin energy realm, but at this moment, as the barrier of cultivation shattered, a brand new world appeared before Wang Chong. There were no longer any obstacles in front of Wang Chong. Wonderful! Wang Chong leaped up from the ground. This wasn't the first time he had reached the true martial realm, but this surge in strength still made Wang Chong extremely excited. From the origin energy realm to the true martial realm, Wang Chong had finally obtained his wish. However, before he could rejoice for long, Wang Chong groaned and fell to the ground. At the same time, something unexpected happened. Boom! Fierce winds blew in the secret chamber. Not long after breaking into the true martial realm, the Halo of Dusk Stallion within Wang Chong's body, which was as heavy as a mountain, suddenly unleashed a terrifying and unimaginable suction force. It was like his body had fallen into a black hole. The stellar energy in Wang Chong's body surged in reverse, all of it madly surging toward the fingernail-sized Halo of Dusk Stallion. Not only that, but all of the origin energy in the depths of the void also surged in with Wang Chong as the center. Wang Chong had never experienced such a terrifying suction force before. Even his flesh and blood were being sucked in and kneaded into a ball. In an instant, Wang Chong's forehead was drenched in sweat. Bang! The door to the secret chamber was violently smashed open. Almost at the same time that Wang Chong fell to the ground, Huang Qianru, who had heard the commotion inside, rushed in from outside. What happened to you? Huang Qianru shot forward and grabbed Wang Chong's arm. At this moment, Wang Chong's face was pale and his body was drenched in sweat. He looked unbelievably weak. He had said that he was going in to cultivate and that she would guard him for a while. Huang Qianru had never imagined that Wang Chong would cultivate to this extent. Damn it! He can't have gone berserk, right? Huang Qianru's complexion was extremely ugly. The Huang clan had sent her to protect Wang Chong. This was no longer just a matter of her relationship with Wang Chong, but the safety of the entire Huang clan. But if Wang Chong's cultivation went berserk, how could she explain this to the Wang clan and her clan? No matter how formidable she was, she couldn't protect him from a cultivation deviation. Just what are you thinking? Wang Chong didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Huang Qianer's ever-changing complexion. He didn't need to think too much to know what Huang Qianer was thinking. Don't worry, I'm not as bad as you think. You're also a true martial realm cultivator. Can't you sense my pulse? Huang Qianer's mind was in a mess, but Wang Chong's reminder also made her realize what was going on. Grabbing Wang Chong's wrist, Huang Qianer sensed the pulse in Wang Chong's body, and she immediately felt embarrassed. Although Wang Chong's breathing was weak and his face was pale, his pulse was very stable. There was no sign of cultivation deviation at all. Why are you squatting on the ground if you're fine? Huang Qianer's face reddened as she flung Wang Chong's arm to the ground. Then, she stood up with a cold expression. Please, do I look like I'm fine? Wang Chong was truly infuriated. He had only said that he hadn't gone berserk. When did he say that he was fine? That's your problem. Since I won't die, I'll be going out. Huang Qianer harumphed and walked out with a cold expression, still carrying her silver sword on her back. Looking at Huang Qianer's cold back, Wang Chong could only smile bitterly. This woman was truly a loyal. But Wang Chong really had no time to bicker with Huang Qianer over such things. This is troublesome. Wang Chong smiled bitterly as he looked at the halo of dusk stallion in his body. Zhao Qianxiu had already said that cultivating this technique would place a heavy burden on the body. It would consume a large amount of origin energy and stellar energy, and it would even cause one's martial realm to deteriorate. But Wang Chong had not expected the consequences to be so severe. Not only did he not have a true martial realm cultivation, he had also fallen from true martial tier 1, origin energy tier 9, origin energy tier 8, all the way to origin energy tier 7. Just the first layer of the halo of Dusk Stallion had caused him to fall by 3 realms. This is going to be bad. This is only the first layer, and I've already fallen by 3 realms. Won't the further I go, the more formidable it will be? Wang Chong sat on the floor and smiled bitterly. The most basic first layer of the halo of Dusk Stallion had already caused one to fall by 3 realms. What would happen to the later layers? Wang Chong finally understood why so few people had been able to successfully cultivate such a powerful technique in his last life. It seems like I have to make a trip to the spirit vein. Wang Chong said to himself. His strength had fallen from true martial tier 1 to origin energy tier 7. This was a massive weakening. Fortunately, he had reached this level before, so as long as he had enough origin energy, he could still cultivate from origin energy tier 7, tier 8, tier 9, all the way back to true martial tier 1. All he needed was a little more time. However, the difficulty would be completely different from before. It would be much easier. After resting for a moment in the secret chamber, Wang Chong walked out. The autumn air was crisp, and smoke billowed from the spirit vein. Thick origin energy had condensed into visible white steam. Wang Chong sat cross-legged in the white steam, his eyes tightly shut. His body was faintly discernible, and he seemed peaceful and calm. From all around, surging origin energy was pouring into Wang Chong's body at an astonishing rate. After settling the matters in deflecting blade manner, Wang Chong rushed to the spirit vein on the same day to cultivate. The origin energy here was so thick that it far surpassed that of Shunwei, Longwei, and Kunwu training camps. And the dragon bone art and barbaric god art that Wang Chong had cultivated allowed Wang Chong to cultivate several times faster than an ordinary person. In just 5 or 6 days, Wang Chong had returned from origin energy tier 7 back to origin energy tier 8. The process was unimaginably easy. This was the difference between returning to one's original cultivation level and breaking into a new one. How comfortable! After some time, Wang Chong opened his eyes and stretched out his arms, his mood relaxed. This was the benefit of having a treasure. At this rate, he would be able to cultivate back to tier 1 of the true martial realm. Not only that, for Wang Chong, opening the barrier to tier 1 of the true martial realm was equivalent to opening the path to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, all the way to tier 9 of the true martial realm. At the very least, he would not encounter any more barriers until he reached the peak of tier 9 of the true martial realm. Moreover, there were some true martial realm cultivation techniques that he could start cultivating. Everything was going so smoothly that it was inconceivable. I just don't know how my cousin is doing over there. Wang Chong suddenly thought of his cousin Wang Liang. In order to search for the meteorites that had fallen on the outer islands, Wang Chong had prepared nearly 1 million taels of gold for Wang Liang, bought and built a large number of fortress ships, hired many martial artists, and even dispatched the clan's guard experts. All of this was on a massive scale and was time-consuming and laborious. But it was enough to show how much importance Wang Chong attached to this mission. Wang Liang was Wang Chong's cousin, and he was the only person he could truly trust. The meteorites scattered on the outer islands occupied an extremely important place in Wang Chong's grand plan. Without the meteorites, Wang Chong's plan would not be perfect, and he might even suffer massive losses. Now, 3 months had passed. Logically speaking, if the voyage had gone smoothly, they should have already reached the outer islands by following the sea monsoon. Although this world is very different from the one I'm familiar with, it's similar in many aspects. For example, the Wuzi steel from Sindhu or the existence of Yingzhou. If Wuzi steel can be found in Sindhu, then there's a high chance that meteorites can be found in those mountains in the outer islands. I wonder how they're doing now. Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the ground as he quietly said to himself. The weather in the outer islands was complex, with great waves, storms, lightning, thunderclouds. Too many things were affected. Moreover, there were no landmarks to speak of on the vast ocean. Even a carrier pigeon would probably get lost in a place like this. Sending messages was extremely inconvenient, so he could only wait for Wang Liang and the others to return. I hope that everything goes well. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he quickly closed his eyes. Right now, there was a limit to what he could do. He could only silently wait and pray that everything went well. With a gust of wind, the spirit vein quickly calmed down. Watch out for the reef at the bottom of the sea. Helmsman, full rudder to the left. Hurry! Watchman, tighten the rope on the flagpole. Lower the sail halfway, hurry. Everyone hold on tight to the rope. Hurry and get moving. The waves are coming. Watch out. Rumble. Following a deafening roar, a huge wave that was several hundred meters tall crashed down from above, toppling mountains and overturning seas. With a loud crack, a mast broke, and at the same time, 7 or 8 sailors were thrown off the ship by the huge waves. In the blink of an eye, the 7 or 8 sailors disappeared in the waves. Not even the slightest sound could be heard. Rumble. The sky was filled with thunderclouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Torrential rain continued to pour down, forming a dense line of rain between heaven and earth. On the mainmast of the ship, Wang Liang gasped for breath, inwardly rejoicing. I dodged another calamity. This thought flashed through Wang Liang's mind, and he suddenly rejoiced that he had listened to his cousin Wang Chong's advice. This ship was made of the sturdiest wood, and the nails on the ship's body were also far more than normal, although the cost of doing so was still high. However, this ship had withstood the huge waves time and time again, saving his life time and time again. Chapter 397. Another bolt of lightning flashed through the dark clouds overhead, striking Wang Liang awake. With no time to rejoice at having just escaped disaster, Wang Liang immediately issued a string of orders. Change course. Lower all the sails except for one. Helmsman, keep an eye on the situation ahead. All sailors, get into position. Whether or not we can survive will depend on ourselves. Coils of rope tied Wang Liang to the mainmast. It was precisely by relying on these coils of rope, soaked in seawater, that Wang Liang was able to protect himself in the storm and issue one order after another. From a tender youth to a dark-skinned captain, only Wang Liang knew what he had experienced in the last 4 or 5 months. The crew on the ship was now less than a third of its original size, and many of the guards of the Wang clan and those his father had assigned to him had died. He had experienced storms, civil strife, conspiracies, assassinations, doubts, divisions, starvation, forced abdication. Not even Wang Liang could count them all. This was an arduous journey that Wang Liang had narrowly escaped with his life, one that no historical records could record. From the self-confidence and smugness he had felt when he first left the port to the calm and tranquil life he had now experienced, only Wang Liang knew what he had experienced. When he first set out, he knew almost nothing about sailing, but now he was the most experienced captain of the entire fleet. To achieve this level of accomplishment in 4 or 5 months was something that an ordinary person could brag about for the rest of their lives. But Wang Liang had no such thoughts. Life could temper a person, but it could also make a person. Only he knew where this astonishing skill had come from. He knew nothing about sailing. His only advantage was learning. He studied day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep, doing his utmost to learn. From the helmsman to the sailors, all the crew members were his opponents in learning. In these 4 or 5 months, one disaster after another and one death after another had taught him how to rapidly grow on the ship. Watch out. The second wave. Careful. Although he had escaped disaster, the disaster was far from over. In front of the might of nature, the abilities of humans were insignificant. Whether it was a true martial realm expert, a profound martial realm expert, or an ordinary sailor, in front of the vast might of the world, they were all equal, there was no difference. In the face of the power of nature, everyone was as insignificant as ants. Once they fell from the ship into the boundless ocean, even if they were in the Xian martial realm, only death awaited them. If they wanted to survive, they had to be of one mind, work together, and cross the river together. But what Wang Liang was worried about was not this vast and unparalleled might of nature, but the elusive and unfathomable human heart. For 4 to 5 months, he drifted on the ocean, set foot on the island again, and returned disappointed again and again. Wang Liang had not found the meteoric metal Wang Chong had spoken of on these small islands. From the initial trust, to the longing for the treasure, to the disappointment, suspicion, and forced abdication. Now, the secret of the extraterrestrial meteoric iron was no longer a secret to some of the higher-ups in the fleet. But everyone was suspicious. Even the Wang clan's own guards were shaken, and some were even roped in by their opponents. How could a person who had never been out to sea, who had never been there, know that there would be meteorites thousands of miles away? If there were meteorites, why had the fishermen of the other seas never discovered them? At the end of the day, this was just nonsense. The suspicion of Wang Chong, the suspicion of Wang Liang, the suspicion of the purpose of the fleet had never ceased. And with the deaths of so many crew members, the suspicion only continued to grow. Wang Liang's position as captain was now in jeopardy. Wang Liang was well aware that if he could not make any progress, what awaited him would be the same as the others, thrown into the depths of the ocean to be fed to the sharks. Boom! The crashing of the massive wave interrupted Wang Liang's thoughts and the tranquility of the fleet. Amidst the shrill screams, several more figures were washed off the ship by the waves. Wang Liang opened his mouth and was just about to issue a new order to adjust the fleet. A moment later, there was a heaven-shaking boom. It was like an invisible giant hand had smashed into the bottom of the ship. Wang Liang felt a pain in his chest. He felt like those coils of rope were digging into his flesh, and his organs were about to be jolted out of his body. Not good. The ship has hit a reef. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, he heard a panicked voice. This was the last sound Wang Liang heard. His vision went black, and he knew nothing else. But it was the sound of the surging of the sea. It seemed like only the snap of a finger, but it also seemed like 10,000 years. Wang Liang finally woke up from his coma. The seawater slowly surged under his body. Wave after wave of water surged over, and then receded. There seemed to be some tiny creature crawling on his body. Cough, cough. Wang Liang coughed a few times, spitting out a mouthful of rising water and sand. When he opened his eyes, he saw blue water and sand. Several small crabs the size of a fingernail were crawling on his hands and body. How could I be here? His chest ached and his head felt swollen. Wang Liang couldn't understand why he was here. His last memory was that the ship seemed to have hit a reef and he had been thrown off. Was I thrown off the ship? Wang Liang's heart tightened, a hint of fear emerging in his heart. In the vast sea, without a ship, one could only wait for death. He struggled to his feet, and a moment later, Wang Liang was struck dumb. Just a few thousand feet away from him, a huge ship crashed head-on into a vertical cliff. The ship was half-tilted beneath the water, motionless. Wang Liang's entire body froze. The ship had run aground. In other words, what it had crashed into last night had not been some submerged reef, but a cliff. Wang Liang couldn't say a single word. The ship had not disappeared, and he had not been thrown off. This was undoubtedly something to be happy about, but the ship had run aground. The only silver lining in this misfortune was that the ship had not sunk. As long as he used some techniques to fix the leak, the ship could still continue its journey. Temporarily putting aside his thoughts, Wang Liang struggled to make his way to the island. His first priority was to find the rest of the crew. Since the ship had run aground here, the rest of the crew couldn't have gotten far. This was the first time Wang Liang had taken a look at the place he had drifted to. This was a lonely island. Strange rocks, each as tall as 2 or 3 people, stood on the island like a strange forest of stones. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the sunlight shone down from above, Wang Liang suddenly felt like the tops of these stones reflected a gloomy metallic luster. No, it wasn't an illusion. Wang Liang's eyes swept over the nearby rocks that had fallen off, and his entire body shivered. Under the mottled and peeling surface of the strange rocks, what was revealed was not brown rock, but pieces of metallic luster. This was the typical luster of metal ore. Wang Liang had once specially investigated for this operation, so he was extremely familiar with the color of this metal ore. Could it be? As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Liang could no longer suppress his excitement. But Wang Liang did not act rashly. After so many trials, he had gone from hope to disappointment, then to hope, then to disappointment. Wang Liang was already used to it. These were just metal ores, not necessarily the meteoric metal Wang Chong spoke of. He had already seen these kinds of metal ores, iron ores, copper ores, and of varying quality. The sheer number of ores was an eye-opener for Wang Liang. However, this place was far from the Central Plains, and the long period of time meant that these ordinary metal ores were not worth mining on a large scale. If these ores were also of that sort, then they would have no value at all. I hope it's the kind of ore I'm looking for. Wang Liang rubbed his hands, his mind uneasy. He knew in his heart that he couldn't go too far. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that the fleet could no longer advance under these conditions. There were no results, no harvest, and the people were not united. Food and water were all running out, and even the sturdy ship he had built with so much care had been severely damaged. He probably wouldn't have many chances to explore. He took in a deep breath and calmed his mind. With a clang, Wang Liang finally unsheathed the bai sword on his back. Wang Chong had given it to him before the operation. There was no way to distinguish meteoric metal from its color, and Wang Liang was not a professional blacksmith, so he could not distinguish it with the naked eye. But Wang Chong had taught him the simplest method. If one used the Wuzi steel sword to chop at it, if one could cut it in half or sink it several feet deep, then it was just ordinary metal, ordinary ore, and had no value at all. But if one could block the chop of Wuzi steel, or if the Wuzi steel could cut through it, it would only be able to cut into a relatively shallow layer. There was no question that this was meteoric metal. This was the simplest method of distinguishing meteoric metal. If it could block the chop of Wuzi steel, then even if it wasn't meteoric metal, the quality of this metal was infinitely close to that of meteoric metal. Clang. In the sunlight, a cold light flashed, and with Wang Liang's uneasy heart, the sword slashed at the exposed part of the jagged rock. For a moment, time seemed to drag on in Wang Liang's eyes. Clang. As the sword swept past, Wang Liang saw that the Wuzi steel sword in his hand was stuck half an inch into the jagged rock, unable to go any further. Wang Liang suddenly froze. All the sounds in the world disappeared in that instant. The entire world was silent, and even time seemed to have stopped at that moment. Half an inch, half an inch. As he watched the Wuzi steel sword finally get stuck in the rock, Wang Liang's breathing almost stopped. Clang 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 clang. In the next moment, Wang Liang seemed to have gone mad. His eyes red, he suddenly pulled out the woozy steel sword and madly hacked at the jagged rock again and again. Half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, half an inch, from top to bottom, every part of the rock was marked by the marks of Wang Liang's woozy steel sword. But without exception, they were all half an inch, some not even half an inch. The unstoppable woozy steel sword that could cut through iron like mud was actually only able to cut half an inch into this strange rock. As if agitated, Wang Liang's eyes went red as he suddenly began to peel away the mottled stone shell on the surface of the rock. Dark gold, it was all dark gold. After peeling away the brown shell on the surface of this strange rock, what was underneath was actually mottled dark gold metal. Clang! Wang Liang suddenly threw away his sword. His eyes red, he raised his hands to the sky and roared with laughter. A success, I've succeeded. I've finally found the meteoric metal. Haha. At this moment, Wang Liang's voice resounded over the entire island. As he laughed and laughed, tears began to flow from his eyes. After so many trials and tribulations, after so many narrow escapes, he had finally found the meteoric metal that Wang Chong had spoken of in the outer islands. From childhood to adulthood, he had finally surpassed himself, truly accomplished something inconceivable. Chapter 398. Wang Liang's laughter alarmed the entire island. Slowly, one figure after another appeared in the stone forest. All the crewmen who had been washed up on the island were alarmed by Wang Liang's laughter. They walked over and stared in confusion at their captain. No one knew what was going on, nor why Wang Liang was laughing so wildly. Set sail. We found our target. We can finally return to the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains. Wang Liang raised his arm and laughed heartily. In an instant, everyone's eyes lit up. The several months of misfortune seemed to have finally come to an end. Good news came in wave after wave. Someone had discovered a dense forest of coconut trees on the island, all of them bearing large clusters of coconuts. This was the best source of fresh water. In addition, someone had discovered giant sea turtles and turtle eggs on the shore. On the island, there were also many small lizards that could swim short distances in the water and prey on the fish in the sea. This was the best meat. In an instant, the problems of fresh water and food that had plagued the crew for several months had been resolved. And this was not the end of the good news. At dusk, several large fortress ships suddenly appeared on the shore of the island. After the rain, the sun had cleared. They had finally followed the trail from last night to this island. After a long time, their luck had finally taken a turn for the better. More than 10 days later, after sufficient preparation, the extraterrestrial meteoric irons on the island had been collected, and the extraterrestrial meteoric irons on the nearby islands had also been searched. After replenishing a large amount of fresh water and food, all of the dozen or so tower ships had finally begun their long journey back to the island with full load. On the mountain of the spirit vein, Wang Chong sat cross-legged in the spiritual energy, motionless like a meditating monk. But his body exuded a tidal wave of energy. It had been more than 20 days since they had entered the spirit vein, and the energy exuded by Wang Chong's body had advanced by leaps and bounds, growing stronger and more intense. And now, it was finally about to reach a peak. Buzz! After some time, Wang Chong's eyes suddenly opened. With a whoosh, he leaped up from the ground and let out a heaven-shaking roar. Roar! Rumble! The mountains responded, one after another. I finally succeeded. Wang Chong did a somersault and landed on the ground. He was overjoyed. After more than 20 days of hard work, in addition to the medicinal pills he bought from Liu Zhizhang, Wang Chong finally, with the help of the rich yuan qi of the spirit vein, went all the way from the 7th level of origin energy to the 9th level, and finally returned to the 1st level of true martial realm. The current Wang Chong, be it strength, agility, or speed, could not be mentioned in the same breath as before. A majestic energy aura surged within his body. This energy was sharp, vast, and filled with an oppressive feeling. It could not be mentioned in the same breath as when he was in the essence chi realm. This was stellar energy. Currently, Wang Chong's entire body was sparkling and translucent, incomparably pure. All of it was the aura chi of the true martial realm. Boom. In the next moment, Wang Chong fixed his eyes on a brown boulder that drilled out of the soil more than 200 feet away. His eyes flickered, and he suddenly launched 100 steps divine fist. This time, it was no longer pure yuan qi. Instead, it was a bright mass of stellar energy that streaked across the sky like a comet. Boom! Gravel flew everywhere, the earth quaked, and the sky swayed. The top of the brown boulder suddenly exploded into pieces. The explosion set off a gale that blew the grass, shrubs, and leaves within a radius of more than 10 feet away. Even the white yuan qi mist drifted along, forming a huge vortex. Good. Seeing this, Wang Chong's eyes brightened. He suddenly opened his feet, and a thick stream of stellar energy flowed out of his body. Wang Chong took up a stance on the spirit vein and began a series of fist techniques. Shoulders and knees united, hands and feet united, eyes and heart united. Each of Wang Chong's moves was explosive, trembling, and shaking. The moves were not profound, but in Wang Chong's hands, they were immensely powerful. The vast stellar energy caused the air in a radius of several dozen zhang around Wang Chong to surge along with his fists like waves, shaking the air around him. The true martial realm did not have the strength to summon the spiritual energy of the world, but the stellar energy on Wang Chong's body could already indirectly affect the surrounding air currents. Boom boom boom. As Wang Chong stomped down, dirt and dust flew into the air. He was like a dragon in human form. Now, I can try out my halo of dusk stallion. Wang Chong's eyes brightened, and he suddenly let out a heaven-shaking whistle. The whistle continued for a long time. After some time, the neigh of Nei's horse came from the bottom of the mountain, followed by the galloping of hooves. Neigh! In the thick fog, a muscular black silhouette appeared, its mane flapping in the wind. It charged into Wang Chong's chest, rubbing its head against Wang Chong's chest while its tongue licked Wang Chong's arm and cheek, a look of intimacy on its face. Ah, little shadow, enough, enough. Little Shadow's licking made Wang Chong's palm itch, and he couldn't help but stroke Little Shadow's glossy mane as he laughed. It had been almost 2 months since he had been injured. Little Shadow had not only completely recovered, his body had also grown taller and more muscular. Only after his bones were broken would he grow stronger. Little Shadow was currently in this state. In just a little more time, Little Shadow would reach adulthood. Patting Little Shadow on the back, Wang Chong mounted his horse and shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Rumble! In the next moment, a green-black ring of light rapidly descended from Wang Chong's body and spread to the white-hoofed Shadow's feet. Rumble! The ring of light transformed into a massive and dazzling ring of ancient black thorns. At this moment, the auras of Wang Chong and the white-hoofed Shadow suddenly became incredibly heavy, as if they were mountains. Meanwhile, the white-hoofed Shadow's speed suddenly skyrocketed. With a fierce neigh and a metallic clatter, the green-black ring of light vibrated as Wang Chong shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Wherever the ring of light passed, the Spirit Vein Mountain quaked. Rocks and trees swayed and were pulverized by the ancient black thorns. The ring of light was like the sharpest of swords, cutting through rocks, trees, weeds, and shrubs, razing everything in its path to the ground. And the metallic clatter of the ring of light resounded through the heavens, making one's heart palpitate. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles, As one with his horse, Wang Chong could feel the scenery on both sides of him speeding away. He couldn't help but heartily laugh, his mind in a carefree mood. The true martial realm and the origin energy realm were on completely different levels, and the halo of Dusk Stallion was also far superior to ordinary true martial realm war halos. Power, speed, agility. Under the effects of the halo of Dusk Stallion, these 3 most important abilities of a martial artist were all greatly enhanced. Wang Chong felt like he was a moving fortress. Not only was he incredibly heavy, he also possessed terrifying speed. When this weight and speed were combined, the resulting impact was extremely frightening. Wang Chong was even confident that if he were to do it again, even with the protection of the stellar energy Iron Cloak, Li would still be heavily injured. Come, let us see just how much strength we have in the end. Wang Chong patted Little Shadow's back and said. Nei seemed to sense Wang Chong's intentions. The white-hoofed shadow turned its head to glance at Wang Chong, and then it increased its speed and pushed its strength to the limit. Rumble! Like lightning, the white-hoofed shadow left a long trail of white chi behind it as it fiercely crashed into a boulder 300 zhang away. Neigh! Amidst the intense neighing of the horses, there was an earth-shattering boom. Smoke and dust billowed, and this rock, which was as tall as a person and made entirely of granite, instantly shattered into thousands of tiny pieces. The highest piece of rock even flew several dozen zhang into the air. Even Wang Chong was greatly surprised by this sight. "Haha, wonderful!" Resounding laughter resounded through the air. Riding on the white-hoofed shadow, Wang Chong looked at the cloud of dust with amazement in his eyes. He had originally thought that it would be quite impressive if the charge of the warhorse could shatter half the rock. He hadn't expected it to be able to shatter the entire piece of granite. Tier 3 of the true martial realm. It's at least at Tier 4 of the true martial realm. And it's almost at Tier 5 of the true martial realm. The result before him was completely outside of Wang Chong's expectations. This level of granite was incomparably sturdy. To shatter it or even shatter a piece of it wasn't very difficult. Anyone at Tier 1 or 2 of the true martial realm could do it. But to shatter it to such a degree, one had to be at least at Tier 4 of the true martial realm, perhaps even Tier 5. On the battlefield, the charge of cavalry relied on the strength of their battle prowess and their extreme speed to display a strength that far exceeded normal standards. This was vividly displayed in this attack. What filled Wang Chong with even greater anticipation was that this was only a small test of the halo of Dusk Stallion's might, and this was only the power of the first layer. As his strength progressed, once the peak power of this move and Little Shadow's unity of man and horse stabilized, it would definitely reach the peak of Tier 4 of the true martial realm, or even Tier 5 of the true martial realm. On the intense battlefield, this move was already extremely threatening. "Is this the halo of Dusk Stallion?" A voice came from his side. Wang Chong turned his head and saw a white-clothed icy beauty slowly walking out of the white mist of the spirit vein, carrying a large sword on her back. Huang Qian'er's face was expressionless, but a strange light flickered in the depths of her eyes. As long as she stayed by Wang Chong's side long enough, many things were no longer secrets. This included the halo of Dusk Stallion on Wang Chong's body. As the renowned fairy of dainty hands of the capital, Huang Qian'er had always believed that Wang Chong's strength wasn't worth mentioning, or perhaps even beneath her. But even Huang Qian'er had to admit that this attack of Wang Chong's unity of man and horse was so powerful that it posed a threat even to her. If Wang Chong continued to progress at this rate, then her bodyguard would probably only exist in name, with nothing to do. Chapter 399. This is only the elementary halo of Dusk Stallion, and it's not very powerful. When I reach True Martial Tier 5, I should be able to cultivate the Level 2 halo of Dusk Stallion. Wang Chong, unaware of Huang Qian'er's complicated thoughts, faintly smiled from atop his horse. The first layer of the halo of Dusk Stallion only required one to reach the true martial realm, but advancing to the second layer was not something that Wang Chong's current cultivation level could satisfy. Instructor Zhao was right. This secret art was indeed difficult to cultivate. Voila! Just as he was speaking, an ear-piercing sound came from above him. This sudden voice attracted the attention of both Wang Chong and Huang Qian'er. The two of them looked up and saw a white carrier pigeon descending from the sky, flying towards Wang Chong. This is... Wang Chong's eyelids twitched, and he subconsciously stretched out his hand, allowing the pigeon to land on it. Wang Chong undid the leggings on the pigeon's legs and took a look. He couldn't help but laugh. Good news really comes one after another. The corners of Wang Chong's mouth curled up, revealing a joyful smile. The letter was written by Aloyo and Arloja, but the message was about the faraway Hyderabad mine in Sindh. After the gold was delivered, the deal was completed. After spending several months to increase production, the high priest of the Hyderabad mine in Sindh had already prepared all the 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore that Wang Chong needed, and he was transporting it as quickly as possible to the capital of the Tang dynasty. There was a time difference between Sindhu and Hyderabad. Judging from the date on the letter, it was written more than a month ago. In other words, the team transporting the Hyderabad ores had been on the road for at least 20 days. It seemed that in another month or so, he would be able to receive the ores from Sindhu and Hyderabad, although there weren't many of them at first glance. However, Wang Chong was well aware that this was probably the largest Hyderabad ore transaction in the world so far. Even the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spazanu would not be able to obtain more than him. The production of this metal ore was too low. Everything is on track. As long as the ores from Hyderabad were delivered, I can forge at least 1,000 Wuzi steel swords. This amount is already enough to equip an entire troop and be used in actual combat. At this moment, Wang Chong sat on the back of his horse, gripping the letter tightly. His heart was filled with relief. The Hyderabad ores had only been discovered for a short period of time. To be able to forge 1,000 wood steel swords in such a short period of time was probably the greatest achievement in the history of the Great Tang, not even in the foreign countries. In his last life, the powerful Mamelukes had yet to appear, but he was already one step ahead of them, gaining the qualifications to construct the first 1,000-man Wuzi steel army. These 1,000 soldiers weren't very powerful when placed against an infantry army of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. However, Wang Chong was well aware that as long as these 1,000 Wuzi steel swords were given to the elite cavalry, they would be able to display the full might of these 1,000 Wuzi steel swords, and they might even be able to influence the outcome of a battle. It had been a long time since he had come into contact with Aloyo and Arloja, and it was finally time for his efforts to bear fruit. "What's wrong?" Huang Qian'er looked at Wang Chong said. "Nothing." Wang Chong chuckled as he crushed the paper ball in his hand into powder. The relationship between the Wang and Huang clans was no longer as hostile, and the Huang clan had even expressed their allegiance. However, there were some core matters that Wang Chong still didn't want Huang Qian'er to know. At the very least, before she truly obtained his trust or trusted him enough to enter the core, Wang Chong still wanted to keep some secrets. Huang Qian'er's expression turned cold, and with a cold snort, she turned around and left in displeasure, continuing to cultivate. Wang Chong had opened up a special cultivation area for her on the spirit vein. By following Wang Chong, Huang Qian'er had also benefited greatly. As he watched Huang Qian'er's figure slowly vanish into the mist, Wang Chong chuckled and turned around, heading to another area where he was training. To Wang Chong, cultivating back to Tier 1 of the true martial realm was just the beginning. Next, by borrowing the dense spiritual energy of the spirit vein, he could begin his other plan for reaching the true martial realm. As the mist churned, Wang Chong's figure quickly vanished into the spirit vein. While Wang Chong was once more cultivating in the spirit vein, in the capital, a black falcon flapped its wings and flew into the Yao residence like an arrow. A few moments later, an experienced steward dressed in black rushed into the depths of the Yao residence, carrying a letter. In the depths of the Yao residence, Yao Guangyi, the head of the Yao clan, was seated upright and still. Next to him was a thin and haughty elder with a goatee and the appearance of a strategist. When the steward walked in, Yao Guangyi was drinking tea with the goatee elder. The steward froze for a moment before quickly lowering his head and walking up to Yao Guangyi's side. After whispering a few words into Yao Guangyi's ear, he handed over the letter. Yao Guangyi took it, glanced at it, and was instantly moved. "What's wrong?" Seeing that the two were talking, the goatee elder raised his head, his expression unhurried. "Sir, there's news from the west. That brat from the Wang clan has been transporting something." Yao Guangyi quickly regained his composure, and without the slightest hesitation, he handed over the letter. He spoke with a respectful attitude, seeming to treat this goatee elder with great respect. As the head of the Yao clan with the support of the old master, Yao Guangyi's status could be said to be extremely stable. In the capital, there were very few people that could command such respect from him. Only people on King Qi's side could command such respect from him. And this was indeed the case. This thin, small, and unprepossessing elder with a goatee had just so happened to be one of King Qi's subordinates. In this period of time, in the Bureau of Military Personnel, Bureau of Punishments, and the imperial court, King Qi had been suppressed by the king of Song and the Wang clan. The people at his side had either been demoted or pushed aside, putting him at a disadvantage in every aspect. King Qi had also begun to recruit soldiers and bayonets, gathering all sorts of talents in preparation for a counterattack. The goatee elder before him was one of the experts King Qi had recruited, and one of the most important. Although the Yao clan had an illustrious status, Yao Guangyi was well aware that King Qi's ambitions were limitless. His ambitions would not be satisfied with just the Yao clan. And King Qi's personality would not allow him to receive any special treatment just because of the Yao clan's status. The old master had once said that when dealing with King Qi, one could not have the slightest bit of arrogance. No matter what decision King Qi made, who he sent, or what opinion he had, the Yao clan only needed to comply. Otherwise, they would only be courting disaster. Yao Guangyi had always firmly remembered this point. Hyderabad or... The old man with the goatee merely glanced at it, and in the next moment his originally calm expression vanished into thin air, and his cold eyes revealed a shocked expression. In the capital, the king of Song and King Qi were sworn enemies, and this naturally included the Wang clan. Wang Chang's Wuzi steel weapon had been a secret at the start, and no one knew what this Wuzi steel weapon was. But more than half a year had passed since then, and King Qi and the Yao clan had spent a great deal of energy and price on it. Wang Chang's Wuzi steel weapon was no longer a secret. A single Wuzi steel weapon could be sold for 70 to 80,000 taels of gold, perhaps even 200,000 taels of gold. Even to an imperial prince like King Qi, who had never cared much about money, such an enormous fortune was an extremely fatal temptation. The Wang clan's sudden rise to power posed an enormous threat to King Qi, and that enormous wealth and Wuzi steel weapon could not go unnoticed. At present, almost everyone in the imperial army, from top to bottom, had a favorable impression of the Wang clan. Even the opposing factions did not dare to lightly offend the Wang clan. The reason was those Wuzi steel weapons. It's not that simple. This time, more than 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore was transported. Yao Guangyi sternly said. Although he had only glanced at it, Yao Guangyi had already clearly seen the crucial content. As a strategist and general, this was a basic ability. The goateed elder did not say anything, but his heart fiercely twitched. After a long while, he could not help but let out a long sigh. What an enormous fortune! That's right. What an enormous fortune! Yao Guangyi agreed. The two men in the room suddenly sunk into a shocked silence. More than 1,000 jun of ore could be sold for more than 100,000 taels of gold. This was an enormous sum. Let alone the old man with the goatee, even Yao Guangyi was frightened the moment he received the news. This was truly a sum of millions upon millions of taels of gold. The extravagance of that brat from the Wang clan had left even him, a perennial figure in the court, deeply shaken. The Yao clan had never been a small clan. But compared to this brat, they were truly lacking. Such an enormous fortune, we can't miss it. After a long while, the goateed elder broke the silence, a look of excitement on his face. If such an enormous fortune were to be allowed to pass by, the heavens would not tolerate it. Moreover, the Wang clan was King Qi's sworn enemy. That's right. Yao Guangyi agreed, a rare occurrence. The Wang clan was already difficult to deal with. If they were to obtain such an enormous fortune, even the Yao clan would find it difficult to contend with them. No matter what, the Wang clan's operation this time had to be foiled. They absolutely could not be allowed to obtain it. Why don't we quickly inform His Highness King Qi? Yao Guangyi probed as he looked at the goateed elder. There's no need. His Highness has a multitude of affairs to attend to, and he is currently feeling vexed and having a headache. There's no need to trouble him with such matters. Otherwise, it will make us, his subordinates, seem untrustworthy. Lord Yao, don't you agree? The goateed elder said without hesitation. Chapter 400. As for Yao Guangyi's intentions, the goateed elder naturally understood. Thus, in the end, he had used Yao Guangyi's army. If something really did happen and King Qi blamed them, they would all be implicated. A strange look flashed through Yao Guangyi's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Teacher speaks the truth. Yao Guangyi nodded. Although he had been testing the other party's words were not wrong. This matter truly was one that he should share King Qi's burden. Moreover, the 1,000 Jun of Hyderabad ore was no small matter. If they were allowed to smoothly transport it to the capital, the Wang clan would be like a tiger that had grown wings, and the Yao clan would be the one to suffer. Yao Guangyi cared more than anyone else about this matter. We must dispatch experts to intercept this shipment as quickly as possible. Right now, our greatest advantage is that the Wang clan still doesn't know that we've discovered their secret. As long as we move fast enough, we can make it in time. However, that convoy also has quite a few experts, all of them great monks from Sindhu. It won't be easy for me to snatch the Hyderabad ore from their hands. As Yao Guangyi spoke, he turned to the goateed elder, his meaning clear. The 1,000 Jun of Hyderabad ore was no small matter, and Sindhu clearly viewed this matter with great importance. Based on the information, there were at least 20-some powerful Sindhu monks guarding the Hyderabad ore, and there were quite a few experts among them. Snatching food from the jaws of tigers from the hands of these Sindhu monks was no easy task. Without enough top-class experts, it would be impossible. Yao Guangyi had no problem, but in terms of experts, the Yao residents had no more than King Qi. King Qi had always been in the habit of recruiting experts, and his residence was already filled with experts and talents. King Qi himself was even a top-class expert. Compared to the King Qi residents, the experts of the Yao residence were like a chestnut in the ocean, not even worth mentioning. It was clearly better for the people at King Qi's side to appear. Haha, if General Yao is worried about this matter, leave it to me. I can handle this matter. There was no need for Yao Guangyi to say anything. The goateed old man laughed heartily, stroking his beard as he took on the responsibility. With a proud expression, he took the initiative to do it. However, sir, the strength of those Sindhi monks is not to be underestimated. There are many of them, and their strength is at least at tier 7, 8, or 9 of the true martial realm. There's even one at tier 1 of the profound martial realm. Ordinary experts wouldn't be able to deal with them at all. It was just that they wouldn't be able to return. Yao Guangyi kindly reminded. Although he was very happy that the goateed old man had taken charge of everything, this matter was equally important to the Yao family. Yao Guangyi had no choice but to remind him of some things. Haha, don't worry, General Yao. They're just some monks in the 7th, 8th, and 9th tier of martial realm. Even if he was a profound martial realm expert, it wouldn't be a big deal. This old man is highly regarded by the King of Qi and is able to mobilize a few experts. The goateed elder stroked his beard, his expression rather conceited. Yao Guangyi nodded slightly, not daring to underestimate this old man. To be able to obtain King Qi's trust, these people naturally had their own outstanding qualities. Since Sir says so, this Yao can rest easy. If possible, I hope that Sir won't mobilize the experts of the estate. The previous ambush has already attracted the attention and dissatisfaction of the Wang clan and the King of Song. If we leave behind any evidence, not even His Divine Majesty will be able to answer, Yao Guangyi warned. Yao Guangyi warned. It hadn't been long since Wang Chong had been ambushed on the official road and nearly lost his life. If King Qi and the Yao family were to make another move and leave behind evidence, even the Holy Emperor would begin to feel dissatisfied. Having served in the imperial court for so many years, Yao Guangyi was well aware that the Holy Emperor simply didn't care about these minor details, nor did he have the heart to care about them. But there were some things that could only be done once. If one went too far, even His Majesty wouldn't ignore them. His Majesty just didn't want to pay attention to some things, but he definitely wasn't feigning ignorance. Anyone who believed that His Majesty was truly muddle-headed would truly be a fool. General Yao, be at ease. We won't attract the attention of the Wang clan and the King of Song. The goateed elder waved his hands without hesitation as he proudly declared. As a steward of the King Qi residence, if he didn't even have such means, he would have wasted King Qi's trust. Oh! Yao Guangyi's eyelids twitched. For the first time, he was astonished. Forgive this Yao for speaking out of turn, but where did Sir find such an expert? To deal with this group escorting the Hyderabad ores, one had to be a profound martial realm expert at the very least. An expert of this level was no small matter, and even the Yao clan would find it difficult to invite them. General Yao, I won't hide it from you. I do know a few people on the road. I wonder if General still remembers that Iron Cloak Li who lived near Longxi? The goateed elder stroked his beard. Iron Cloak Highwayman? Yao Guangyi's eyes flashed. He still had a deep impression of the Iron Cloak Highwayman who had nearly killed Wang Chang's group. Alas, they had failed on the verge of success. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in so much trouble right now. Does Sir know such an individual? Yao Guangyi immediately understood. General Yao's reaction is truly fast. No wonder King Qi thinks highly of you. Indeed, I do happen to know such an individual. However, this person is much more formidable than the leader of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen. On the road to the western regions, this person is without a doubt the king of bandits. His cultivation has long reached the profound martial realm, and he has countless experts under his command. With this person's appearance, no matter how formidable the king of Song and the Wang clan are, they won't be able to implicate us. The goateed elder stroked his beard, a shrewd glint in his eyes. Yao Guangyi was greatly surprised by these words. Only now did he realize that he had underestimated this frail-looking elder. If he really did know such an individual, then he was unquestionably the best candidate for this operation. And the operation would be flawless. It's wonderful that Sir has such a candidate. As long as we can seize that batch of ore, the Wang clan is certain to suffer a heavy blow. Yao Guangyi nodded, his mind much more relaxed. This is not a small amount of wealth. Once this matter is over, we can transport this batch of ore to the capital. If His Highness King Qi can obtain the aid of this batch of Hyderabad ore, he will be like a tiger that has grown wings, and he will definitely value us even more. The goateed elder nodded. This was his ultimate goal. Yao Guangyi froze, and then he bitterly smiled. Sir's idea is quite good, but it's not very practical. Oh? Is General Yao not tempted? This is hundreds of millions of taels of gold. The goateed elder said with a frown. Sir misunderstands my meaning. Yao Guangyi helplessly said. It's not that I don't want to use this ore, but that even if we get our hands on it, it's useless. In the entire world, only that brat can run the business of Wuxi Steel. This is also his exclusive business. Although he had spent a great deal of effort to understand, this person clearly did not have a very good understanding of the Yao clans and King Qi's opponents. General Yao, what do you mean? Are you saying that only they can have the Hyderabad ore and we can't? When the time comes, we just need to lie and say that we bought it from Sindhu. The goateed elder was somewhat displeased. It's useless. The Hyderabad ore is that brat's exclusive business. Yao Guangyi bitterly smiled. Without hiding anything, he explained what he had learned from the Court of Judicial Review about the contract between the Wang clan and Hyderabad, which allowed the Wang clan to monopolize the Hyderabad ore business of the Central Plains. The goateed elder stared in a daze, momentarily at a loss for words. That brat might be young, but he's extremely meticulous. Sir hasn't interacted with him for long, so it's normal for you to not understand him. In the future, Sir will understand. In the entire Wang clan, Wang Yan and Wang Geng aren't even worth mentioning. Wang Zhen is inflexible, and the only one who can truly threaten us is that brat. If not for that, how could we have lost in the last operation? Yao Guangyi said. The goateed elder was stunned. He had only been a subordinate of King Qi for a short period of time. There were many things that he did not understand as thoroughly as Yao Guangyi did. He had originally believed that his opponents were the Wang clan and the King of Song, but it now seemed that the truth was different from what he had understood. But we don't need to leak this matter. As long as we secretly forge a Wuxi steel sword, isn't it all the same? The goateed elder said. It's useless. The Wuxi steel sword truly was forged from Hyderabad ore. But Hyderabad ore alone isn't enough to forge a Wuxi steel sword. I won't hide it from you. In truth, I've already done what you've just mentioned. However, this is what I've produced. Yao Guangyi opened the drawer and took out a pitch-black metal sword. This is a Wuzi steel sword? The goateed elder was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his eyes as he stared at that swarthy, seemingly no different from an ordinary sword. If not for Yao Guangyi's explanation, he would never have dared to believe that this sword was forged from Hyderabad ore. This was a far cry from the gorgeous, shiny, demonic and incomparably sharp weapons sold by the Wang clan. I also didn't want to believe that this was forged from Hyderabad ore. Only when I personally watched from the side did I finally confirm that this was a weapon forged from Hyderabad ore. As Yao Guangyi spoke, he took out a second swarthy sword from the drawer. There was no doubt that this sword was also forged from Hyderabad ore. Although these iron swords were very short, only about a foot long, they all looked exactly the same, and all of them were unremarkable. But doesn't the capital's Zhang clan also produce Wuzi steel swords? As long as we forcefully abduct a few people and have them help us practice our swords, wouldn't it be the same? The goateed elder said somewhat unwillingly. Yao Guangyi sighed once more. This is where the problem lies. All the craftsmen of the capital's Zhang clan are only forging sword embryos. The most crucial as well as the final step of forging is completely grasped in that boy's hands. It can be said that besides him, no one in the entire Tang dynasty knows how to forge that kind of Wuzi steel sword. Even if we snatch that 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore, I'm afraid we still won't be able to forge the Wuzi steel sword we want. The goateed elder sat there in a daze, as dumb as a wooden chicken. Previously, when Yao Guangyi had said that the boy's work was watertight and meticulous, he hadn't believed it and had thought nothing of it. But at this moment, he suddenly realized just how watertight that boy was. Chapter 401. This is 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore, a fortune worth nearly 100 million taels of gold. Are we sure that we don't have a way? The goateed elder muttered to himself. He had to admit that he had never imagined such a situation. There was clearly such a good opportunity, such a large piece of meat, but he just couldn't eat it. Without the forging skills of Wuzi steel, these ores were useless to them. That's not necessarily true. Yao Guangyi said after a few moments of thought. Oh. The goateed elder raised his head, a questioning look in his eyes. I heard that the Arabs and Karaks Spaz Inu of the West have some experience in forging Hyderabad ore. Although we can't use it ourselves, we might be able to sell it to them. That's all we can do. The goateed elder sighed. Although he didn't have much understanding of Hyderabad ore, he knew that the difference between raw material and finished product was enormous. A finished Wuzi steel weapon was worth tens of thousands of taels in the Central Plains, but in raw ore, it would only be worth a few hundred taels. This was far from what he had expected, but it was better than nothing. After all, they wouldn't be able to use it in their hands. The two swarthy objects in Yao Guangyi's hands were the best proof of this. I'll notify the other side and have them seize the ore as quickly as possible. Have them bury it on the spot. Once this matter has passed, we'll contact the Arabs. Let's just let them have the Hyderabad ore. The goateed elder reluctantly said. Yes, that's all we can do. Yao Guangyi also sighed. Although he had appeared calm, how could Yao Guangyi not be moved by the prospect of 100 million taels of gold brushing past his hand? His words were indifferent, but his heart was filled with regret. If weeds aren't cut by the roots, they'll grow back with the spring breeze. Although we've robbed them of this business, this isn't a long-term solution. The goateed elder lightly rapped the table twice, his eyes turning to Yao Guangyi. General Yao, your Yao clan has many connections. Can't you think of a way to cut off this business of the Wang clan from the source? If we could cut it off at the source, wouldn't we be able to solve this problem once and for all? The goateed elder said. Yao Guangyi's eyes lit up and he was greatly tempted. Sindh was weak and impoverished, unable to compare to the Central Plains. If a group of experts were to be sent to the Hyderabad mine to control the mine from the source, it might really be the end of the matter once and for all, a real plan to wipe out the family. The only problem was that Sindhu was far from the Central Plains, and he wasn't familiar with the terrain. It would probably take at least 3 to 4 months. But the benefits were also obvious. Although the Yao clan and King Qi could not touch the Wang clan, much less Wang Chong, they could still send experts to Sindhu to make trouble. Even if the Holy Emperor knew about it, he would not blame him. There were some things that couldn't be said as long as they didn't fall out. There was no need to worry about the Holy Emperor. Yao Guangyi's gaze was used to looking at his own country, dealing with the affairs of the Central Plains. Here, he was inferior to the goateed old man. He had just arrived, but his vision was even more far-sighted. That's a good plan, mister. However, I'm afraid that our Yao clan won't be able to do this alone. I'm afraid we'll need mister's help. Yao Guangyi said, General Yao, be at ease. I'll make arrangements for King Qi. The goateed old man stroked his beard and smiled. For the first time, the two of them had reached an agreement on this matter. Flap flap. A few moments later, a black falcon flew out of the capital like a bolt of lightning. At almost the same time, the experts of King Qi and the Yao clan set out from the capital, meeting up and heading toward the distant Sindhu. The winding mountains stretched out in a continuous chain. After passing through Longxi and heading northwest for several thousand miles, there was a vast desert. The mountain winds howled, and traces of weathering and desertification could be seen everywhere. This was Qixi, the only path to the western regions. Qixi was under the rule of Qixi Protector General Fomenlinta, the imperial great general. But not even Fomenlinta had much control over this region. The vast Gobi Desert was a product of nature. Before the power of nature, even the power of the empire paled in comparison. Many bandits, brigands, and bandits had grown around the Qixi Desert. The desert was the best barrier. As long as one plunged into the desert, not even the imperial army would be able to reach them. And in the northwest of the Qixi Desert was a place called Mount Qiongqi. Heat waves surged and sand was everywhere. In this place called Mount Qiongqi, it was unknown how many bandits and highwaymen were stationed here. Beneath their feet, dazzling halos could be seen. Who knew how many true martial realm experts there were at Tier 4, Tier 5, Tier 6, and even Tier 7 and 8? Rumble! It was noon, and the world was filled with billowing white waves. It was the hottest time of the day. Suddenly, the ground beneath the surrounding sand began to shake, and waves of rumbling came from all directions of Mount Qiongqi. The sand was shaking violently, and the ground was shaking incessantly, as if something huge was about to drill out of the ground. Neigh! The warhorses neighed. All the warhorses in a radius of several dozen li sensed this uneasy aura and began to move restlessly, some even standing on their hind legs. Warhorses were far more sensitive to this sort of aura than humans. However, unlike their steeds, all of the bandits and highwaymen who sensed this sight began to howl in excitement. Many of the brigands even took out their wineskins and began to guzzle while laughing, their eyes brimming with anticipation. Haha, it's exactly the same as yesterday. It's time for the gang master to train again. Extreme heat, extreme yang, and extreme toughness. Where else could there be a better place for the gang master to train than this desert? Ah, look at these new brats. We haven't even started, but they're already so scared. How can they follow the gang master like this? That's right. Come, throw a few of them into the sea of sand. With this bit of courage, they don't have the right to follow the gang master. The bandits excitedly laughed, the anticipation in their eyes deepening. Rumble! With a tearing sound, with Mount Qiongqi as the center, the sea of sand began to seethe and suddenly crack open. The next moment, boom boom boom. Hundreds of rocks, large and small, densely packed together, seemed to come to life as they rose from the ground under the influence of an invisible power. Boom, boom, boom. The large rocks weighed nearly 1,000 jin, while the small ones weighed several dozen jin. After rising into the sky, they did not fall back down, but instead hung motionlessly in the air. In an instant, all of Mount Qiongqi fell silent. Even though they had seen this miraculous sight countless times, every time they saw it, they still felt a powerful shock and impact. It was like seeing it for the first time. This is incredible! What a miracle! Besides the gang master, who else could do this? On the ground, countless gazes were filled with envy, fear, and deep reverence as they stared at this miraculous sight. A true martial Tier 4 bandit didn't even realize that the wine in his wineskin had spilled out and soaked his clothes. This was no miracle, nor was it some unfathomable might of the heavens. Everything was the result of human effort. It was the power of their gang master. The wind howled, sending sand and rocks flying. Almost at the same time as the boulders flew out of the ground, the world's origin energy in all directions seemed to be attracted by something, surging majestically towards the center of Mount Cheongchi. Clang! The loud sound of steel rang in everyone's ears. Just as everyone was looking up, a huge black steel rushed down from the top of the mountain like a wave, stopping halfway up the mountain. Then there was another roar, and the second ring of black steel rushed down again, covering the first ring of steel and continuing to expand outwards. 1, 2, 3. A total of 7 enormous and heavy black thorny halos enveloped the entire Mount Cheongchi. The last one, which was also the largest, even released a heavy aura that was as heavy as the earth. These 7 massive halos of thorns combined to form the most primitive and powerful ring of light. The Ring of Earth. These 7 rings of light were filled with the thick aura of the laws of the earth. In front of this ring of earth that was as heavy as a wall, the true martial Tier 7, 8, and 9 martial artists were all insignificant. This was a huge power that only a high-level Shen martial realm expert could possess. Buzz! Tens of thousands of rocks scattered through the air were first motionless, and then they began to tremble and groan. Next, all the sand and gravel began to gather under the influence of an invisible force, shrouding the entire area in a hazy haze. It had been a scorching noon, when the sun was at its strongest. But the surroundings of Mount Cheongchi were so shadowy that even the sky was obscured. Under the shadow of this sky-obscuring dust, all the bandits lost their luster and fell silent. Rumble! After some time, the boulders fell back down and the dust settled. All the floating boulders fell back down, and the fissure in the ground closed up once more. The sand and gravel closed up from all directions. In the blink of an eye, everything was gone. The entire sea of sand returned to its original state, without a single trace of change. It's over! The gang master has finished his cultivation. What a pity! I'm afraid the gang master is about to wake up. The bandits looked at their surroundings slowly calming down, each of them longing for more. Chapter 402. Boom! With a massive boom, dust roiled from the summit of Mount Cheongchi as a stone door opened and a tall and slender figure walked out. Beneath his feet, a shrunken ring of earth spread out. It emitted an aura as heavy as a mountain, making his body seem even more powerful. Without any signs or gestures, the man simply stood there like a pillar that could support the heavens. Naturally, he became the center of the world, instantly suppressing the auras of all the bandits and highwaymen in a radius of several dozen li. An enormous aura swallowed the heavens and enveloped the entire area, and the mood instantly became extremely heavy. Paying respects to Gang Master. A loud voice resounded through the heavens and earth. The thousands of bandits and highwaymen around Mount Cheongchi dismounted from their horses and knelt down at almost the same time. The ferocious and bloodthirsty bandits who viewed human life as nothing more than grass all lowered their prideful heads at this moment, showing respectful and submissive expressions towards the man on the mountaintop. From Longxi to the western regions, all the bandits and bandits, whether they were here or not, had to submit to this man. On the entire road to the west, this was the true king, the king of bandits, the lord of the sea of sand. No matter where the bandits were, they would send generous gifts every year to show their respect. Rise! A resounding and magnetic voice resounded in everyone's ears. On the summit, the man's sleeves fluttered as he extended a hand. Thank you, Gang Master. With a burst of resounding voices, countless bandits and bandits stood up. From Longxi in the east to the western regions in the west, the dragon bandits' reputation was like the noon sun on the road to the west. There was no one who did not know the name of Black Dragon Zhao, the true leader of all bandits. After several decades of fame, Black Dragon Zhao had gathered many top-class experts under his banner, including several hundred true martial Tier 7 and Tier 8 experts. Moreover, he was extremely familiar with the geography of Qixi and had become one of the most powerful factions on the road to the west. Kree! Just as everyone was getting up, a long howl suddenly broke the silence. Everyone raised their heads and saw a massive pitch-black falcon shooting down from the clouds like an arrow, flying straight toward Black Dragon Zhao. For a moment, all was silent. Black Dragon Zhao's eyes flashed, and he immediately extended his hand, allowing the sharp-eyed night falcon to land on his arm. With a wave of his arm, a ferocious-looking highwayman walked forward and tossed a large piece of fresh horse meat into the night falcon's mouth. Black Dragon Zhao nodded, then took the letter from the night falcon's leg. Hee, you're finally here? After reading the contents of the letter, Black Dragon Zhao crumpled the paper into a ball, an expression of anticipation in his eyes. After waiting for so long, he had finally gotten the news he wanted. Get ready, we're leaving immediately. Shattering the ball of paper in his hand, Black Dragon Zhao threw it aside and gave the order to attack. Boom! In an instant, the originally silent crowd of bandits burst into a tsunami of cheers. The entire Mount Xiongqi was filled with jubilation. After such a long time, the gang leader was finally going to take action again. Everyone knew that gang leader would not easily make a move. Something that was worthy of him taking action was definitely something big. A smile appeared on Black Dragon Zhao's lips as he gazed at the mountain of bandits and highwaymen filled with excitement. As the uncrowned king of the road to the west, Black Dragon Zhao had long since ceased to care about wealth. At his level of strength, there was only one thing he cared about, and that was power. But he was not some king of bandits. What he wanted was that kind of real power. And now, this letter was providing him with precisely this sort of opportunity. As long as he could complete the task mentioned in the letter, he would be able to smoothly establish a relationship with King Qi. King Qi's status, authority, and the bandits under his control would assuredly bring him to a higher level, a height that he had never dared to imagine before. At the very least, those several dozen monks from Sindhu were not what he needed to worry about. At this moment, Black Dragon Zhao's eyes exploded with ambition. Let's go! In a flash, Black Dragon Zhao waved his hand and led the entire dragon bandits through the sea of sand, charging in the direction of the caravan carrying the Hyderabad ore. What? The convoy carrying the Hyderabad ore has been robbed. Several days later, on the Spirit Vein Mountain, Wang Chang's face was brimming with shock. He almost didn't dare to believe his ears. How could this be? The matter of the high priest delivering 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore to him had been an extremely secretive one. In the entire capital, there were very few people besides him who knew about it. Just a few days ago, he had been waiting for this 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore to be delivered to the capital. He hadn't expected that it would be robbed just a few days later. The sudden news had thrown Wang Chang's mind into chaos. This ore was extremely important to him. Nothing could be allowed to happen to it. This was not something as simple as wealth. Young master, I've already verified this matter. There's no doubt about it. Eagle also had a grave expression. He currently had an extremely heavy mission. After Wang Chong had gone to the Spirit Vein Mountain to cultivate, he had left almost everything to him, whether it was the Wang clan, the training camp, or the Hyderabad ore. All the channels of the Wang clan were available for him to use. Several days ago, when Arloja and Ablonidon's letter had arrived, Eagle had almost immediately taken action. Not only had he sent people to receive them, he had even dispatched the fastest falcon to the western regions to keep watch. Who did this? Wang Chong clenched his right hand into a fist as he took in a deep breath. Now that it had happened, the urgent task at hand was to get the ore back as quickly as possible. It was Qixi's dragon bandits. Old Eagle said, but his answer was surprisingly straightforward. Even Wang Chong was taken aback. He had originally believed that this sort of matter wouldn't be so easy to uncover. These fellows never even thought about hiding their tracks, swaggering over to plunder. They even left behind the insignia of their bandits. Just what is the background of this dragon bandits? Wang Chong asked. In his last life, he had never paid any attention to these matters, so he had never heard of this Chishi dragon bandits. The eagle also did not hesitate, immediately telling Wang Chong everything he knew. As a former member of the Bureau of Justice, he truly did know much more about these matters than Wang Chong. Wang Chong instantly fell silent. A bandit king that ruled from Longxi to Chishi to the western regions. It had to be said that all of this had exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. But even now, we still don't know why the dragon bandits did this. In the past, the dragon bandits would never plunder ores. In normal circumstances, only gold and silver would attract their attention. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that they know the price of Wuxi steel, so they plundered this batch of Hyderabad ore to extort and threaten us. Eagle said, "No, they definitely aren't using this to extort and threaten us." Wang Chong had a pensive look on his face as he waved his hand without hesitation. How can young master be so sure? The eagle was somewhat surprised. A tiger would never fight with a stray dog for food, and a lion would never team up with a hyena. Other bandits might be able to extort, but a bandit king like Black Dragon Zhao would never do something like this. He definitely has a deeper reason for doing this. The eagle's eyes widened at these words, and he suddenly had a bad premonition. Young master isn't planning to say, "Correct. This matter definitely has something to do with the Yao clan and King Qi." Wang Chong firmly declared. But isn't the time a little too short? They might not have reacted so quickly, right? The eagle said in disbelief. Although he had also suspected the Yao clan and King Qi, the relationship between the two sides was obvious. But the eagle still felt that they might not have reacted so quickly. There's definitely a monster behind this abnormal situation. You said it yourself. Although the dragon bandits have a habit of plundering, Boss Black Dragon Zhao rarely takes action. Moreover, he has so many bandits paying their respects to him every year, so why would he plunder my Hyderabad ore? When did the bandits start forging swords again? If no one was directing him, he would never do such a thing. Wang Chong sneered. If you want to know if the Yao clan and King Qi did it, the method is very simple. The eagle, send someone to investigate. See how the Yao clan and King Qi residents have been doing these past few days. If the Yao clan and King Qi residents are still as noisy as before, then it might be their doing. If they're exceptionally quiet, then there's no need to ask. It's definitely their doing. The eagle's speed was faster than he had imagined. A night falcon flew out. In less than an hour, the people of the capital had finished Wang Chong's test for the eagle. Bang! Wang Chong fiercely punched, shattering the stone. It really was them. Wang Chong's complexion was ashen. The eagle's complexion was also rather unsightly. Wang Chong's conjecture had been correct. The Yao residents and King Qi, which had always been aggressive and noisy, had been abnormally calm in the last few days. This situation was clearly abnormal. Young master, what should we do next? The eagle asked. Whether or not the Yao clan and King Qi had done this was no longer the problem. The problem was how to find the Hyderabad ore. 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore was no small sum. Even though the eagle didn't have much understanding of Wuxi steel swords, he knew that the value of this ore was astronomical. Even to the great clans of the capital, this was an unimaginable number. In short, the Yao clan and King Qi had dealt a heavy blow to Wang Chong. This time, they had struck Wang Chong's weak spot. Wang Chong said nothing, his complexion extremely unsightly. He had never been in such a situation before. From the intelligence gathered by the eagle, the dragon bandits had many experts, more than 1,000 of them. Their boss, Black Dragon Zhao, was a high-level profound martial expert. Even if Wang Chong fought to the death, he wouldn't be able to deal with a person of this level. Moreover, Chishi was Protector General Fomenlinta's territory. This was his mortal enemy. In the regional commander's incident, Fomenlinta had been the one who wanted Wang Chong dead the most. In his territory, Wang Chong could not let him know that he had lost 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore, or else he would be in even more trouble. As for the Yao clan and King Qi, last time, he had been ambushed by them on a training mission and almost died on the way. If the Wang clan dared to leave the capital this time, Wang Chong was sure that they would intercept and kill them on the way. Moreover, unlike last time, when dealing with him, if it was just the experts of the Wang clan, these two clans would have no qualms about attacking. Wang Chong had a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Chapter 403. All was quiet on the Spirit Vein Mountain. Eagle looked at Wang Chong, his brow tightly creased. He was only skilled at taming eagles and birds, and this had delayed his cultivation on the martial path. With his cultivation at Tier 9 of the true martial realm, even if he was half a step into the profound martial realm, he was still no match for Black Dragon Zhao. Moreover, Black Dragon Zhao had countless bandits and brigands under his command. In this regard, Eagle was also creasing his brow. If only Brother Ma and the others were here. Eagle thought of Ma Yinlong. After dealing with King Sojurim, Jin Long had left, Solitary Wolf had been sent to Jianan, and Iron Arms had been dispatched by Wang Chong on a secret mission. They wouldn't be able to return for some time. If the three of them were here, although they still wouldn't be able to compare to Black Dragon Zhao, who was a profound martial rank 7 dragon bandits, they would at least be able to take care of him. It seems like I can only call him. Wang Chong suddenly gave a long sigh. Who is young master speaking of? Old Eagle's entire body shivered. At this time, he truly couldn't think of anyone who could resolve the situation before him. Wang Chong only smiled, not replying. 8 hours later, a travel-worn Li Sai appeared in front of Wang Chong from Deflecting Blade Manor. As he gazed at the 2-meter-tall Li Sai, his body brimming with explosive power and pressure, Wang Chong couldn't help but inwardly sigh, somewhat unwilling. Wang Chong's original intention had been to think of a way to delay Li Sai until the beginning of spring, preferably until the war in the south broke out. But the current situation was so urgent that he couldn't afford to worry about such things. This 1000 June of Hyderabad ore was one of the most important things in Wang Chong's plan. Without this 1000 June of Hyderabad ore to forge the Wuzi steel sword, when that thing happened, he would be useless. All the effort and time he had put into it before had become meaningless. As the future invincible general, a valiant existence who could single-handedly turn the situation of the entire battlefield, Li Sai was Wang Chong's only, "You better think it through. You only have one chance." Li Sai looked down at Wang Chong with a smile on his face. His voice rumbled like thunder. After waiting for so long, Wang Chong finally came to beg him. As long as he completed this task, he would be able to return to the western region in broad daylight. Of course. Wang Chong said without hesitation. Looking around, Li Sai was probably the only one who had this ability. Good. I was just waiting for you to say this. Li Sai raised his head to the sky and laughed. Without another word, he turned and left. What Black Dragon Zhao? What dragon bandits? His goal was to conquer the western regions and pacify all the kingdoms. How could a trifling bandit block his path? Wait a moment. Wang Chong suddenly called out. What? Kid, do you want to go back on your word? Li Sai rumbled like a mountain as he turned around and stared at Wang Chong said. You're wrong. Give me 3 days. I feel like you're still lacking a suitable weapon. Wang Chong seriously said. Li Sai hesitated. He originally wanted to refuse, but after some thought, he still nodded. He didn't feel like he needed any special methods to deal with a band of bandits. But the lack of a suitable weapon for his physique truly was his shortcoming. Ever since he left the mountain, he had never found a suitable one. But Li Sai finally nodded. After leaving the mountain, Wang Chong returned to his home. After his last weapon, it had been a very long time since Wang Chong had personally forged a weapon. Wang Chong took a ruler and personally measured Li Sai's height, the width of his palm, the ratio of his upper body to lower body, and the thickness of his shoulders. Then he spent another day drawing up a blueprint before burrowing into the cave. Unlike any other time, Wang Chong brought 4 pieces of Hyderabad ore into the cave. This was a quality that surpassed any previous forging. Even Li Sai, who was originally indifferent, became interested in this. How could he not care about his first weapon? Clink cling clang 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 clang. Cling clang clang. Inside the cave, the ear-piercing sound of metal rumbled incessantly. Sparks flew in all directions, and thick smoke billowed out from inside. From night to day, from day to night, Wang Chong did not rest or sleep, pouring all his energy into this task. This operation was related to his entire plan, and failure was not an option. Thus, Wang Chong placed an unprecedented amount of importance on this task. Allocate 1,000,000 taels of gold and find me the best inscription master in the capital, the strongest inscription master. In one day, I want this sword to be inscribed with enough sharpness, toughness, and swiftness, until this sword can no longer endure. 2 days later, Wang Chong walked out of the cavern wearily, his face covered in soot and soot. 1,000,000 taels. The eagle's face was filled with shock, and even Li Sai couldn't help but widen his eyes. There's no time. We have to resolve this matter as quickly as possible. The longer we delay, the more disadvantageous it will be. Wang Chong wearily said. Although 1,000,000 taels was a lot, 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore was even more valuable. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Otherwise, it would all be too late. Moreover, 1,000,000 taels of gold was worth 1,000,000 taels of gold. This sword had cost 4 jun of Hyderabad ore, even more than the death's abyss that Wang Chong had forged. In terms of weight alone, this sword weighed 130, nearly 140 jin. Even a true martial realm expert would find it very difficult to use this sword. Being able to raise it did not mean that one could freely use it. This sword had been forged by Wang Chong especially for Li Sai. In short, it was unique. Even if he spent 1,000,000 taels of gold, it would only increase its value, not weaken it. Wang Chong was sure that the power of this sword would far surpass any sword he had forged before. Understood. Feeling the determination in Wang Chong's voice, the eagle no longer hesitated and strode in. Inside the cave, there was a huge package wrapped in black cloth, extremely heavy. The eagle picked up the package, stood up, and left. A day later, the eagle finally returned with the package. Young master, it's all done. A total of 3 inscription masters have added 72 inscription arrays of all sizes and types. There's no way to add more. The eagle said in a low voice. 1,000,000 taels of gold was not spent in vain. The number of inscriptions on the hilt had reached a level that other weapons could only look up to. Wang Chong did not say anything, but just knocked on the anvil in the cave. Yes. The eagle nodded and quickly left. He then quickly released more than 10 the eagle, nighthawk, and nightingale to monitor the surroundings. Wang Chong had never allowed anyone to observe the last few steps of the sword forging process, and naturally, the eagle was included. This was Wang Chong's unique secret, as well as the greatest and most valuable secret of the Wang clan. The cave was eerily quiet. It was only until dawn that the sounds of clanking echoed in the cave, each time like thunder. It's done. Late in the morning, Wang Chong finally walked out of the cavern. A huge sword, 2 meters long, wrapped in sharkskin, was taken out by Wang Chong. The black scabbard didn't have many gems embedded in it. It was completely black, and there were simple golden lines on it. There weren't too many decorations, but it exuded an extreme magnificence from the inside out. Don't open this sword easily. Only open it when you really need it. Wang Chong said as he placed the sword in Li Sai's hands. Li Sai stood guard at the entrance of the cave, not immediately taking the sword. Instead, he looked at Wang Chong, a strange look in his eyes. Okay. Solemnly taking the sword from Wang Chong's hands, Li Sai weighed it in his hands, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. Then, he turned around and strode out without hesitation. His heroic figure swiftly vanished into the distance. The eagle, help me send a message to Big Uncle. Have him and the King of Song help me mobilize soldiers. In the name of suppressing bandits, mobilize soldiers from Baiting, Qixi, and Longxi. In the name of a joint operation, hurry to where the dragon bandits are. In addition, do your best not to alarm Fomin Linta. Wang Chong said. The dragon bandits didn't just have Black Dragon Zhao. There were also several thousand powerful bandits. Wang Chong wouldn't place his hopes on Li Sai alone. A single person's strength couldn't deal with several thousand soldiers. But if the imperial court's army was added to the equation, everything would be different. The only problem was that Qixi was Fomenlinta's territory. If they weren't careful, they might attract his attention. In addition, go to the King of Song's residence and find the old butler. Although peak profound martial experts are very difficult to borrow, experts at Tier 1, 2, and 3 shouldn't be a problem. Have them go and receive Li Sai. In addition, you should go as well. I need to be informed at all times. Use carrier pigeons and eagles to communicate. Wang Chong said. Yes, young master. The eagle replied without hesitation. Although his strength wasn't very high, still at the peak of the true martial realm, he could rely on his eagle taming skills to quickly send news. In addition, young master, should I call Iron Arms over? There's no need. Wang Chong's heart stirred, but he still shook his head. Iron Arms had his own mission, and even if he was here, he wouldn't be able to deal with Black Dragon Zhao. This titan of the Western Road could only place his hopes on Li Sai. Yes, young master. Old Eagle solemnly nodded and then flew off on his shuttle. I hope that everything goes smoothly and that I can succeed. Everything that could be done had been done. As he watched the eagle leave, a hint of worry flashed through Wang Chong's eyes. The current Li Sai was still far from that invincible great general of the empire. Wang Chong had no idea if he could succeed or not. Moreover, with the Yao clan and King Qi interfering, even if he succeeded, he might not be able to smoothly obtain the whereabouts of the Hyderabad ore. This won't do. I still have to meet Yang Zhao. If he appears, not even King Qi will dare to object. In addition, I won't arouse his suspicions too early. Chapter 404. Wang Chong had gone to see Yang Zhao at noon and only returned late at night. Whether it succeeds or not will all depend on luck. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he ascended the spirit vein. Everything had already been arranged. Yang Zhao had agreed to help build an army from the Bureau of Military Personnel to help suppress the dragon bandits near the Qixi Desert. Li Sai's abilities and the Imperial Court's suppression should be enough to threaten the dragon bandits and Black Dragon Zhao. Afterward, Wang Chong ascended the spirit vein, calmed his mind, and began to cultivate with all his might. This was all he could do at the moment. Now that his cultivation had reached the true martial realm, there were many things that Wang Chong could cultivate. One of them was an extremely powerful technique that Wang Chong had learned in his last life. The Leaping Dragon Spear. Time flew by, and 10-some days passed in the blink of an eye. While Wang Chong was cultivating on the spirit vein and quietly waiting for news, the capital was in an uproar. An invisible net had been cast out of the capital, enveloping Qixi in the extreme west. Carrying Wang Chong's massive broadsword, which was taller than a man, Li Sai and his 2 horses were traveling day and night toward the western regions. The distance from the capital to Qixi was long, and it would take at least a month. Li Sai's method was the only one that could shorten the time needed to reach the Qixi Sand Sea. As Li Sai took the lead, traveling day and night to Qixi, the experts of the Eagle and the King of Song's residence were in hot pursuit. The mobilization of the Bureau of Military Personnel had also been smoothly transmitted to the Qixi Protectorate, the Biding Protectorate, and the Big Dipper Army. It was not strange for an army to organize a joint operation in the name of suppressing bandits. In the past, the Imperial Court had used this sort of operation against bandits that were too big to deal with. In short, under Wang Chong's push, a large net formed from many factions was rapidly advancing toward the Qixi Sand Sea. Hoo! A strong gust of wind swept up the sand and dust from the sea of sand, covering the sky and covering the earth. The entire vicinity of Mount Qiongqi was covered in a gray haze. However, the dragon bandits around Mount Qiongqi were still heavily guarded. For ordinary people, this kind of sandstorm was extremely dangerous and difficult to accept. But to the bandits who lived here, they were already used to it. All of the horse bandits used clothes and cloth to cover their mouths and noses, patrolling normally in the sandstorm. This was their basic ability. Mount Qiongqi looked relaxed on the outside, but it was tense on the inside. There were many more people in many key areas, and they seemed to be extremely vigilant. Last time, He had killed quite a few Sindhi monks in order to plunder the goods. These monks were not weak. There was even a Xian martial arts realm expert who was personally killed by the gang leader. After so many years, the gang leader rarely made a move. After the incident, there was news that the goods belonged to a big shot in the capital. All the dragon bandits were extremely nervous. Everyone knew that the big shot would not let the matter rest so easily. However, the dragon bandits were not so afraid that they would flee. In the region of Chishi, they had already experienced far too many encirclement and suppression by the imperial army. Not even Fomenlinta of the Chishi Protectorate could do anything to them, much less anyone else. If that big shot in the capital really did send an army and they couldn't win, they could just hide in the desert. A fierce gust of wind sent sand flying. The area around Mount Cheongchi suddenly trembled, and then a strange feeling came from the distant wind. It's finally here. At almost the same time, on the summit of Mount Cheongchi, a lofty figure slowly opened his eyes. Even in the midst of the sandstorm, those eyes still exuded a dazzling light that no one dared to look directly at. Black Dragon Zhao was sitting on a stone chair on the summit. To his left and right were the elites of the Cheongchi bandit gang, all of them looking in the same direction with cold and solemn eyes. An hour ago, he had sensed an unfamiliar aura suddenly appearing in his perception. Moreover, it was heading straight for his Mount Cheongchi without the slightest deviation. Within a radius of 100 li around Mount Cheongchi, not a single blade of grass grew. Only he and his dragon bandits existed. There was no doubt that this person was coming for him. They're truly fast. It's only been 20-some days, but they were able to get here without stopping. Black Dragon Zhao's eyes were filled with disdain, his hair flying in the wind. He naturally exuded the aura of a ruthless and ambitious person. It would take at least a month and a half to get from the capital to Mount Cheongchi, but this person had clearly traveled day and night. This also showed how much importance they attached to the goods. But just one person, wasn't this person treating him with too little importance? If it were Chishi Protector General Fomenlinta, even if it were just one person, he would have already fled, not lingering a moment in this place. In order to guard against Fomenlinta, he had even placed many spies around the Chishi Protectorate headquarters. As long as Fomenlinta went out, as long as he was in the air, a carrier pigeon would immediately fly to Mount Cheongchi. But what about the others? Not everyone could become a great general of the empire. In the entire Tang dynasty, there were only a few people that he feared. To send a single person to seize back the ore from him was truly delusional. "Boss, he's here." A voice suddenly came from next to him. In an instant, almost half of the dragon bandits on the summit turned to look in the same direction. At some point, a black silhouette had appeared in the vast sandstorm. Step by step, it was slowly making its way toward Mount Cheongchi, toward the group. His steps were very slow, but they were abnormally firm and heavy. Let alone the sandstorm, not even the sea of blades, the sea of volcanoes, or the abyss of adversity would be able to stop his steps. This person possessed a terrifying and extremely powerful will that could never be defeated. He's a true man. Black Dragon Zhao gazed at the sandstorm, the disdain in his eyes slowly transforming into a hint of respect. Very few people could give him this sort of feeling. Just a single figure was enough to change his mind. But there was no question that this person had done it. Boom! In the sandstorm, Li Sai slowly made his way toward Mount Cheongchi. After some time, Li Sai finally got close and took the Wuzi steel sword that Wang Chong had forged for him from his back. Sword and scabbard, he threw it to the ground and stabbed it in front of him. At this moment, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed. Half of Mount Cheongchi trembled from Li Sai's strike. "I've finally arrived." Li Sai placed his hands on the hilt of the Wuzi steel sword and took in a deep breath. After more than 20 days, traveling day and night, and exhausting 3 well-trained warhorses, he had finally arrived at the distant Mount Cheongchi of Chishi. Standing at the base of this mountain, he could finally clearly see the black-robed Black Dragon Zhao looking down from the summit, his heroic aura swallowing the heavens, as well as the dragon bandits elites at tier 7, 8, and 9 of the true martial realm. Black Dragon Zhao? Li Sai's voice was brimming with energy, rumbling like thunder through the air. The moment he opened his mouth, his voice drowned out the sounds of the storm. Almost all the warhorses were startled, and Nei immediately reared up. After traveling for more than 20 days and only resting for a few moments, Li Sai's eyes showed no fatigue, only a deep excitement and a thirst for the upcoming battle. Truly a true man. On the summit, Black Dragon Zhao gave a rare word of praise as he looked down. At such a close distance, Li Sai could clearly see him, and Black Dragon Zhao could naturally see him as well. Li Sai's huge physique and strong body were almost a size bigger than the strong men of this era. Standing at the foot of the mountain, even if he didn't do anything, he was like the Buddha Vajra, giving people a great sense of oppression. If he was like this even before fighting, one could easily imagine his true strength. I am Black Dragon Zhao. Black Dragon Zhao said, his voice rumbling and brimming with dignity. How should I address, sir? Li Sai. Li Sai stood at the base of the mountain, a faint smile on his lips. Now that he had found the person in question, everything would be easy to discuss. Li Sai. Black Dragon Zhao creased his brow, a hint of doubt in his eyes. His eyes and ears covered the world, and wherever there were bandits, his eyes and ears could reach them. The true experts of the world, from Silla and Goguryeo to the countries of the western regions, were known to him. But Li Sai, Black Dragon Zhao shook his head. He had never heard of this name before. It seemed that this person was not some formidable personage like he had imagined. From the capital? Black Dragon Zhao spoke once more, his expression much more relaxed. Li Sai grinned. He didn't need to think too much to know what Black Dragon Zhao was thinking of him. But Li Sai didn't care in the slightest. Although he was still a nobody at the moment, in the future, he would definitely make this name resound throughout the world. Since you're Black Dragon Zhao, everything is easy to discuss. Hand over that batch of Hyderabad ore. Li Sai's voice boomed through the world like a peal of thunder, his voice unquestionable. Boom. The moment Li Sai spoke, before Black Dragon Zhao could reply, the dragon bandits surrounding Mount Cheongchi couldn't help but roar with laughter. Even Black Dragon Zhao, sitting on the summit, couldn't help but smile. Hero, I respect you as a true man. How about this? You join our dragon bandits. I'll leave a place for you at my side. In the howling wind, Black Dragon Zhao extended his right hand and pointed at the empty seat at his side. Ha, officials are officials, bandits are bandits. Our paths are different, and we can't work together. I'll ask again, is Boss Zhao willing to hand over that batch of plundered Hyderabad ore? Li Sai rested his hands on the Wuzi steel sword as he spoke. Hand it over? Ha, what right do you have? Just you alone? On the summit, Black Dragon Zhao's face was brimming with derision. Since the other party wasn't willing to submit, there was no need for him to be polite. At the base of the mountain, Li Sai earnestly nodded his head, apparently unable to hear the sarcasm in the other party's words. Are you serious? Of course. Li Sai earnestly nodded his head once more. Since that's the case, then come and take it yourself. Black Dragon Zhao's expression chilled. As he spoke, his long hair danced in the wind and his two arms slowly spread open. Rumble. As he spread open his arms, tens of thousands of dragon bandits howled out from behind the mountain, surrounding Li Sai at the foot of the mountain. At the same time, even more experts of true martial tier 7, 8, and 9 walked out from behind Black Dragon Zhao. This place was a dragon's pool and tiger's den. This place was Black Dragon Zhao's territory. Ha, I knew you would be like this. At the base of the mountain, Li Sai gripped his sword with both hands. Ha ha. In the face of this vast sea of dragon bandits, Li Sai showed no fear in his eyes. There was only extreme excitement for the upcoming battle. His life was destined to be born for battle. Since you're not willing to hand over the ore, then I'll come and take it myself. With a rumble, Li Sai rested his hands on his sword and then pulled out the Wuzi steel sword that Wang Chong had tailored for him. Boom. Chapter 405. Flap, flap, flap. Several days later, night falcons and eagles flew out, leaving afterimages in the night sky as they flew toward the capital. What? Li Sai succeeded? He relied on his own strength to kill the dragon bandits and retrieve the lost Hyderabad or? Upon receiving the news sent by the eagle on a night falcon, Wang Chong was stunned, not daring to believe his ears. Although he knew that Li Sai had a chance of success, Wang Chong had never imagined that it would be like this. The combined armies from Longxi, Qixi, and Baiting were still on the way, and the experts of the King of Song's estate and the eagle had not yet arrived. But Li Sai had already single-handedly defeated the entire dragon bandits and retrieved the 1,000 Jun of Hyderabad ore. Wang Chong had gone to great lengths to get his big uncle to use the strength of the Wang clan, to get the King of Song, to get in touch with Yang Zhao, and then to mobilize the Bureau of Military Personnel, but in the end, it was all for naught. Li Sai had single-handedly dealt with the entire dragon bandits. Just how did this fellow do it? Wang Chong stood on the Spirit Vein Mountain, his hand gripping the letter that the eagle had sent him. His mind was in turmoil, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. That was thousands of dragon bandits. Almost all the strongest bandits on the Western Road had been gathered under Black Dragon Zhao's command. In terms of the size of an army, Black Dragon Zhao's dragon bandits were equivalent to an army. And Li Sai had single-handedly defeated the profound martial Tier 7 Black Dragon Zhao and several thousand dragon bandits elites. Wang Chong didn't dare to believe it. This was too inconceivable. It had to be known that Li Sai was still far from reaching the level of the invincible great general of his last life. Wang Chong wrote several letters to the eagle, but more news was still on the way. The eagle arrived at the Spirit Vein Mountain a few days later. Even though it had been more than a week, the eagle's face was still full of shock. "What's going on?" Wang Chong asked. "Black Dragon Zhao is dead. The dragon bandits are finished, completely finished." The eagle panted, his face filled with extreme shock. Ever since he received the news, he had been traveling day and night, his 2 horses constantly changing carriages as he rushed to the capital. The eagle was the closest to the news. He even left a little bird there. However, the eagle was no less shocked than Wang Chong. When the troops from the Ministry of War arrived, they saw corpses all over the mountain. Corpses of humans and horses were everywhere. All of them had been cut in half. Even the sand in the desert was dyed red. The ground was full of cracks and large rocks. The scene was extremely tragic. The eagle also had eyes and ears in the Longxi, Baiting, and Longxi armies. Wang Chong had arranged for all of them to follow the eagle's orders so that it would be easier for him to unify the situation and receive news at any time. The eagle immediately told him everything he knew. Wang Chong said nothing. Even he was shocked by the scene described by the eagle. This was completely the style of fighting on the battlefield. Li Sai had entered the army and had yet to participate in a proper battle, but he was already beginning to display the fighting style of the invincible great general. Wang Chong was well aware that the scene described by the eagle was precisely the fighting style of the army that Li Sai would lead when he became the invincible great general. Their fighting style was often based on heavy hacking and aggressive attacks. No matter how many people their opponents were, they would never retreat. This was precisely the style that Li Sai had displayed in this battle. "This is fate," Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Li Sai had not yet become the invincible great general whose name would shake the world, but he was already beginning to display this sort of loftiness. "In addition, I've also received news from Li Sai. He says that he's already convinced 10 some dragon bandits elites to renounce darkness for light and join his side. He's currently leading them back to the capital." The eagle said. Wang Chong had a look of surprise on his face. This news had truly surpassed his expectations. This really is his style. Wang Chong had a strange expression on his face as he inwardly sighed. In Wang Chong's view, Li Sai's persuasiveness was completely innate. On the bitter battlefield of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, no matter how formidable their opponents, the army led by Li Sai had never retreated. It was fine if Li Sai himself did not retreat. After all, he was very strong. But those soldiers who followed him also followed him with unwavering determination and fearlessness. Was this not the result of his charisma? Even before he had become the invincible great general, Li Sai was already showing off his abilities. What a pity! Do you really want to let such a person go? The eagle looked at Wang Chong, a look of regret on his face. He had never known that the giant man that Wang Chong had transferred from biting and was making such a ruckus at the gate of Deflecting Blade Manor was such a powerful existence. This sort of valiant fighting strength had even managed to kill Black Dragon Zhao. Letting him go would be far too much of a pity. There's nothing that can be done. A man cannot stand without his word. Since I promised him back then, I naturally have to do it. Wang Chong knew what the eagle was thinking and waved his hand, indicating that he should give up on this idea. The eagle didn't know of Li Sai's origins, nor had he heard of his reputation, so he couldn't help but be shocked upon hearing this. But to Wang Chong, this was no longer a secret. To have a future invincible great general serve under him for a period of time was already not easy. This was something to be proud of. In the end, it's impossible to keep such a powerful figure. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. In the end, a future great general was not so easy to tame. Wang Chong could only calmly accept this result. It could only be said that fate was not so easy to change. To be able to retrieve his 1000 June of Hyderabad ore was an unexpected harvest for Wang Chong. With this matter resolved, Wang Chong breathed a long sigh of relief. After sending off the eagle, Wang Chong returned to the depths of the spirit vein and continued to cultivate the leaping dragon art. 10 some days later, Li Sai returned to the capital, accompanied by 10 some dragon bandits elites at tier 7, 8, and 9 of the true martial realm. In addition, several Sindhi monks had also been brought back to the capital by Li Sai. I've already delivered those monks to your home. I found them west of the Chishi Desert. All of them were injured, and 2 of them were called Ablonidon and Arloja. I think they said that they knew you. On the spirit vein, Li Sai stood tall, his tall figure like a mountain. This bitter battle had not only failed to tire or frustrate him, it only made him seem even more spirited. It was like his body had an inexhaustible supply of energy. Thank you, Wang Chong sincerely said. Although he had already learned of the news from the eagle's messenger pigeon, Wang Chong still expressed his thanks. In addition, I've also shipped the Hyderabad ore back to the Wang clan. Following your orders, I left a few people to stand guard there. Li Sai said. Wang Chong nodded and tossed over an object the size of a pellet. This is for you. What is it? A hint of surprise flashed through Li Sai's eyes as he subconsciously caught it. Pill. Your injuries from this mission are not light, right? If you swallow it, it can help you neutralize the dark blight. Wang Chong said. It's just a minor matter. Li Sai laughed and waved his hand, not taking it to heart. His body was much stronger than others, and after so many days, he had mostly recovered, so it was no longer important. Don't be careless. A dike of 1,000 li can collapse because of an ant's hole. No matter how small the injuries accumulate, they can still take one's life. Wang Chong said calmly. Li Sai was indeed powerful, but no matter how powerful he would still be injured. In his previous life, Li Sai's attacks were too ferocious, causing him to neglect his own defense. Coupled with his usual carelessness, all kinds of injuries and hidden injuries kept accumulating. That was why, at the final critical moment, he was triggered by the intense battle, causing all kinds of hidden injuries to break out all over his body, causing him to collapse and die. Since he had met Li Sai in this life, he would do whatever he could to help and change the situation. The longer Li Sai's lifespan, the healthier his body would be, and the longer the empire would last. In his previous life, Wang Chong had had enough of the feeling of fighting alone. Also, here's a bag of pills. In the future, swallow a small pill during minor battles. He had swallowed a total of 3 large pellets during the battle. Be careful and it will be beneficial to you. Wang Chong tossed over a bag. Li Sai stared blankly for a moment, but he still took it. Now that I've taken your pills, I just so happen to have something to give you. Oh! Wang Chong's face was filled with surprise. I found this on Black Dragon Zhao's body. It was stored in a jade box and kept close to his body. It seems to be a treasury. However, I've never been interested in treasure maps. If you're interested, there's no harm in taking a look. But don't get your hopes up. It seems to me that Black Dragon Zhao hasn't made much progress either. As Li Sai spoke, he casually tossed a pouch to Wang Chong like he was throwing away his shoes. Treasure map? Wang Chong blinked, even more surprised. Li Sai wasn't interested in a treasure map, but how could he be interested? In terms of wealth, Wang Chong was truly wealthy enough to rival a country. Even if he really did have a treasure trove, it probably couldn't compare to Wang Chong's. Putting everything else aside, just this 1,000 jun of Hyderabad ore was already an astronomical amount of wealth. For many great clans, they might not even be able to gather this amount in 100 years. However, something that an ambitious and ruthless person like Black Dragon Zhao kept close to his body could not be as simple as an ordinary treasure trove. Just what is it? Wang Chong curiously opened the pouch that Li Sai had tossed over. When he saw what was inside, Wang Chong was flabbergasted. Because inside the pouch was a piece of leather, a leather that Wang Chong had never seen before. It was black and ancient, covered in scales the size of baskets. Wang Chong sensed a powerful ripple of energy from this leather, and almost instantly, Wang Chong sensed danger in his soul. What is this? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.